My sister fell into addiction and abandoned her child. I chose to adopt my nephew despite family judgment. I, a 28 female, work as a product manager for a software firm, primarily remotely. I've created a life that I'm actually satisfied with. I've never desired children, and it's become a source of contention with my family. If you were at our annual family reunion last weekend, you'd think I was a bad guy for not having children or devoting my life to chasing them. Family reunions are meant to be enjoyable, right? A time to gather up with family, eat too much food, and perhaps giggle at embarrassing childhood memories. Well, mine was more of an endurance test. The tension was palpable from the moment I walked into the house, the covert glances exchanged between aunts, the overly broad smiles, and the loaded questions. Everything was there. I had hardly hung up my coat when the first jab was delivered. "You're still single, huh?" My cousin Patricia, 35F, spoke loudly enough for the entire room to hear. Patricia, who has 3 children and always writes about them on social media, was holding court in the kitchen, displaying her youngest's most recent school photos. "Must be good to have so much free time. What are you even doing with yourself?" I smiled nicely and shrugged it off, because what is the point of participating? But it did not end there. Another relative joined in, discussing how their lives truly began after having children. Then someone else inquired, "Have you ever considered adoption?" I mean, it's not too late, but it's more difficult as you get older. It was as if they had planned this routine, an organized ambush aimed to make me feel insignificant. They said it all with faux sweetness, as if they were attempting to assist, but the verdict was as apparent as the lemonade on the table. Even my mother joined in, quietly saying that I was wasting my prime years and that every woman should experience the joy of parenthood. My father nodded in agreement, adding that they would have liked to have more grandchildren. I tried to divert by highlighting my work accomplishments and hobbies, but it didn't help. My accomplishments were never taken seriously here. They only valued diapers, report cards, and family Christmas photos. At some time, the conversation turned to my younger sister Lauren. Growing up, she was the golden child, beautiful, charming, and always the center of attention. Lauren was in the spotlight whenever there was one. But everything changed when she got pregnant at 21, dropped out of college, and became associated with the wrong crowd. Addiction followed, as did a series of poor decisions. She eventually withdrew from our lives completely. I last saw her years ago, during a court-mandated family therapy session that concluded with her storming out. Nobody had heard from her since. When Lauren's name came up, the room became quieter. It was as if everyone agreed not to linger on it for too long. My aunt casually added that Lauren's son, Jake, was now in foster care. She spoke it as if she were discussing the weather, detached, easygoing, and without passion. I froze for a while, trying to digest what I just heard. Jake, I had never met him, but I knew he was around 10 years old. He was living with Lauren and one of her boyfriends when I last heard from him. Apparently, that did not last. "What do you mean, he's in foster care?" I asked. My aunt shrugged. "You know how Lauren is. Her decisions caught up with her. Poor kid, what can you do?" I looked around the room, hoping for someone to say something, anything, but they all continued their talks. It was as if Jake did not exist. I pressed my parents about it, but they dismissed me. "You wouldn't understand," my mother replied. "It's not that simple." The remainder of the evening was a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about Jake, a 10-year-old youngster abandoned by his mother and rejected by those who should have cared for him. And here they were, lecturing me on duty and family values. When I came home that night, I couldn't put it down. I started exploring, attempting to learn everything I could about Jake. It didn't take long to get some information. He'd been in the system for a while, moving between families. The more I read, the angrier I became. How could my family simply pretend he did not exist? How could they sit around judging me and ignore a youngster in need? The next morning, I called a social worker and inquired about Jake's status. It was not a decision I took lightly. I knew it would be complex and messy, but I couldn't bear the thought of him being forgotten. If my family does not stand up, perhaps I can. This was not about demonstrating something to anyone. It wasn't about deflecting their criticism or making myself feel better. It was about Jake, a child who deserved better than the hand he was dealt. I wasn't about to let him fall between the gaps. I spent the next day making calls and figuring out how to meet Jake. The social worker I spoke with informed me that Jake had been in foster care for several years. He'd been transferred between families and, reportedly, had behavioral issues. When I inquired what that meant, she referenced difficulty adjusting, acting out, and suffering at school. It did not surprise me. How could a child go through what he did without having some scars? The social worker was wary about allowing me to visit him. She said that Jake had trust issues, and that meeting new people could be intimidating for him. But, upon learning that I was a family member, albeit a minor blip in Jake's life, she consented to arrange a supervised visit. She advised me to control my expectations. A week later, I arrived at the foster care center for the meeting. My palms were moist, and I was constantly adjusting my backpack strap. I didn't know what I was getting into. The social worker brought me into a small room with mismatched furnishings and colorful peeling paint. Jake sat at a table and drew on a sheet of paper. His hair was scruffy, and he appeared considerably smaller than I had imagined for a 10-year-old. He didn't look up as I stepped in. I sat across from him, unsure what to say. The social worker introduced me as his aunt. Jake returned his attention to his sketch after a fleeting peek at me. His shoulders were slumped, and he held the pencil hard. I did not want to push him, so I simply commented on his drawing. He was drawing a robot, detailed and exact. When I complimented it, he murmured, "Thanks," but continued working. The initial meeting was quiet and unpleasant, but I felt an attraction to him that I couldn't explain. He didn't trust me. Why would he? But I knew I wanted to return. When I told my family about the visit, it went about as well as one would imagine. My mother rolled her eyes and told me I was overly theatrical. My father scoffed and said I was playing hero. My cousins laughed and joked about how much I would regret it. It stung, but that didn't matter. I was not doing this for them. I returned to see Jake several times during the next 2 weeks. He was always guarded, but he began to open up. I took him a sketchbook on one of our visits, and his face lit up for the first time. He adored drawing robots, spaceships, and superheroes. He was also skilled at it. When I asked him about his favorite movies, he ran off a litany of animated films. I made a mental note to watch them later so I would have something to discuss with him. He gradually began to share small aspects of his life. He told me about his mother, how she used to sing to him when he was younger, how she smelled like strawberries, and how she stopped coming up when he needed her the most. It was painful to hear, yet I did not intervene. I let him speak. I had no illusions about how difficult the adoption process would be when I decided to begin. The paperwork alone was daunting, and the system was designed to filter out anyone who wasn't completely dedicated. Some of my friends were supportive, while others raised eyebrows. They reminded me that Jake arrived with baggage, and asked if I was prepared for the responsibilities. It did not change my mind, but it made me reflect on how unprepared I felt. My folks were furious when they found out. They accused me of insulting the family and heaping further humiliation on them. My mother even accused me of stealing Lauren's child, which was ludicrous given how they had wiped their hands of him. After one too many arguments, I stopped returning their calls. Fortunately, not everyone was against me. I had a handful of close friends help me set up Jake's room. We painted the walls a gentle blue, installed shelving for his sketchbooks, and added a little desk where he could draw. I wanted him to feel like he had his own space, even if he wasn't living with me yet. During one visit, Jake told me that he had been bullied in foster care. The other kids taunted him for not having a real family. I could see how much that affected him, even though he tried not to show it. I promised myself I'd modify it. He deserved to feel protected and wanted. The process stalled when the agency requested family references. My parents refused to vouch for me, claiming I was unfit to raise a child. It felt like a hit in the belly, but I didn't let that stop me. I discovered coworkers and friends who were more than happy to support me. Update. The custody court is planned for next month, so I've been preparing in my spare time. The social worker cautioned me that these hearings may be intense. They examine every element of your life to see whether you are suitable to be a parent. My remote work position turned out to be a benefit. They appreciated that I had a flexible schedule to fulfill Jake's requirements. Jake stayed with me for the first time overnight yesterday. I was nervous, maybe more than he was. I had packed the fridge with snacks that I thought kids would enjoy and purchased extra blankets in case he became cold. He arrived carrying his sketchbook, which seemed to be his security blanket. We attempted making pancakes for dinner because he remarked he'd never done it before. It was a total disaster. The batter got everywhere, on the ceiling, don't ask, on our shirts, and somehow in my hair. But then something incredible occurred. Jake laughed, not a polite chuckle, but a true gut laugh. It was the first time I'd heard him actually laugh, and it made the entire disaster worthwhile. Later that night, while I was tucking him in, an entirely new experience for me, he asked if he might hang glow-in-the-dark stars from the ceiling. In case I stay again, he explained quietly. My heart almost burst. After he went to sleep, I sat in the living room and cried. Happy tears? Overwhelmed tears? Fearful tears, all at once. The most unusual element has been adjusting to video conversations with my team while having indications of kid life in the background. During today's morning stand-up, my supervisor discovered a half-finished robot drawing pinned to my wall. When I told her about Jake, her entire face brightened up. It turns out her child is also interested in robots. She offered to link Jake to some online art programs. My cousin Patricia has been circulating tales in the family group chat about how I'm not mother material, and that this is simply one of my phases. I exited the discussion. Anna, another relative I've never been very close to, shocked me with a private message. She expressed her admiration for what I was doing and offered to help. She has taught art to children of Jake's age before. The social worker came by today to check on Jake's room setting. She saw that the art materials were organized by type and color, Jake's system, not mine, and commented on how he's already personalizing the area. She also added that his current foster home said he's been more involved and communicative since our visits began. Last night, Jake showed me a drawing he had been working on. It was unlike his typical robots and spacecraft. This one featured two folks sitting at a table eating pancakes. That's us, he remarked, before abruptly changing the subject. I had to excuse myself to the bathroom so he wouldn't see me cry again. The most difficult thing has been dealing with my parents' silence. They have not spoken to me since I legally began the adoption process. Dad did pass by my house once. I noticed his automobile slowing down, but he did not stop. Mom blocked me on Facebook after I shared a photo of Jake's painting desk. Their rejection hurts, but seeing Jake slowly emerge from his shell reminds me why I'm doing this. Tomorrow, we have another meeting with the adoption counselor. Jake requested if he might bring his sketchbook and show her his progress. The counselor believes art therapy could be useful for him, and I agree. For the time being, I'm taking things slowly, attempting to build trust and stability. Some days are more difficult than others, yet they all feel right in some way. Update number 2. The home inspection was more thorough than I anticipated. Last week, the social worker called to plan it, and everything in my flat seemed inadequate. I spent days childproofing corners, changing furniture, and triple-checking every possible safety concern. I also reconfigured all of my business cords to avoid tripping. During the inspection, she spotted Jake's artwork conspicuously displayed in what was once my home office and is now his art room. She paused briefly in front of his most recent work, a realistic picture of a futuristic city. She smiled and remarked, "He's going to feel at home here." Those words had a different impact than any family acceptance could. The financial hardship has been real, however. My savings have been depleted due to legal bills, home improvements, and preparing Jake's place. I canceled my gym membership and began meal preparation instead of buying takeout. Every spare dime goes towards making this happen. My startup's HR department astonished me by giving adoption aid benefits. I had no idea we had them. Then came the shocking news. My parents had filed a legal objection to the adoption. They wrote a letter to the court, stating I'm mentally unstable and using Jake to prove a point. The claims were ludicrous. They dubbed me a workaholic who can't even take care of a plant. I had to engage a lawyer to refute their accusations. Anna really stepped up. She submitted a compelling letter to the court praising my character and dedication to Jacob. She also recounted how the family had previously failed him, which allegedly caused a disturbance at the last family gathering. I was not invited. Jake has been asking questions regarding the process. Yesterday, he asked whether he could keep his last name or if he had to take mine. The idea that he's thinking about these details causes my heart to accelerate. I told him it was his decision. He nodded and returned to drawing, but I could tell he was processing it. The court date is scheduled for next month. My lawyer believes we have a good case, especially because none of my family members who opposed the adoption attempted to help Jake themselves. Still, the wait is nerve-wracking. Jake picks up on my nervousness, so I've been trying to keep optimistic around him. On a more positive note, his art instructor contacted me about entering one of his pieces in a school exhibition. Jake was hesitant at first, but after I showed him some famous robot art online, he became enthusiastic about the concept. It would be his first time displaying his work in public. I have to remember that, despite all of the legal battles and family drama, this is about providing Jake with stability and love. Sometimes, when I watch him engrossed in his art, finally feeling safe enough to create freely, I know deep down that this is right. Update 3. Life with Jake has settled into a new normal, albeit not without its problems. The most difficult part has been establishing routines, which his prior foster families struggled with. We worked together to design a weekly timetable that includes plenty of time for art. Getting him up for school remains a daily battle. Who knew 10-year-olds could be so clever in their excuses? But we are making progress. The school situation has been difficult. Jake's teacher called me in for a meeting last week. His math and science grades could be improved, but that wasn't her main concern. She noted that he becomes exceedingly anxious during parent-teacher conferences or when other students discuss their families. During the latest family tree project, he shut down and refused to cooperate. I've been working with Jake's school counselor to assist him handle these situations. We're working on alternate projects that honor diverse types of families. His art instructor has been especially helpful, allowing him to stay in the art room during lunchtime when he requires a peaceful environment. She describes his technical abilities as excellent for his age, particularly his perspective sketching. The custody hearing last week was very stressful. I was unprepared for how personal the inquiries would become. They inquired about everything from my work schedule to my personal life, hoping to evaluate whether I could create a stable environment. When they questioned my decision to adopt as a single parent, I held firm. I mentioned how my remote work flexibility allows me to spend more time with Jake than in many traditional family situations. In terms of work, my staff has been remarkably understanding. During a recent video call, Jake broke down in the background because he couldn't find his favorite sketching pencil. Instead of becoming annoyed, my coworkers shared their own parenting disaster experiences. Following that, one person sent Jake a professional art supply kit. Mrs. Thompson, my neighbor, provided the biggest surprise. She's been teaching art at the local community center for 30 years and offered Jake private lessons. He was first cautious about working with someone new, but when he saw her studio, which was filled with sculptures and paintings, his eyes lit up. It has now become a weekly routine. Last night, we had our first significant breakthrough. Jake was working on a new drawing, darker than his typical work. When I inquired, he finally opened up about his time in the system. He talked about feeling like he was always moving, and how he stopped unpacking his bags at new places because he knew he wouldn't remain long. He handed me a little sketchbook he had hidden, packed with drawings of the many rooms he had slept in. Some postings occurred just a few days apart. The conversation was difficult, but important. We ended up sitting on the floor of his art room till late, looking at his drawings and telling me stories about each location. Some made him giggle, while others made him quiet. When he came to the drawing of his present room, I saw it was more detailed than the others. I like drawing this one, he told me, because I'm not scared to remember it. We are still working on his trust difficulties. He occasionally hoards food in his room, a behavior he developed during more unstable times. Instead of confronting him about it, I purchased a little refrigerator and assisted him in organizing his snack hoard. Small steps, but they matter. The familial drama continues to emerge. My aunt sent me a passive-aggressive email about real parenting and how I'm playing house. I didn't react, but Jake overheard me discussing it. This morning, I discovered a drawing on my desk depicting a superhero version of myself blocking lightning bolts with an art shield. It made me laugh and cry simultaneously. Update 4, Lauren showed up to my door uninvited yesterday. I hadn't seen her in 3 years and scarcely recognized her. She requested to see Jake, stating that she had gotten clean and was ready to be a mother again. When I explained that unexpected visits were not permitted under our current arrangement, she became hostile, accusing me of taking her son. The confrontation turned ugly. Lauren began screaming about her maternal rights, which drew the attention of neighbors. Mrs. Thompson, bless her, just happened to be walking by. She hurriedly whisked Jake, who was happily in his art room with headphones on, into her house before he could see anything. Lauren refused to go, so I had to contact the cops. After they escorted her away, I discovered she had also been bothering my parents, demanding they fix this. It appears she has been sleeping at a halfway home downtown. My mother called for the first time in months, not to encourage me, but to recommend that I consider Lauren's feelings. I hung up. Jake's therapist planned an emergency session following the incident. We've been working through his feelings around Lauren's reappearance. He's puzzled, angry, and mostly afraid. He asked me if he needed to go back to her. When I assured him that he didn't, he showed me a drawing he'd been working on, a fortress with numerous locks and security systems. The symbolism was not subtle. My counsel has been wonderful throughout this. She assisted me in filing a restraining order against Lauren and is currently attempting to limit any future contact to monitored visits only. The court seemed sympathetic, particularly after Lauren's outburst at my house. The family has separated into two factions. Most people still agree with Lauren, alleging that I am depriving a mother of her kid. But a few people, including Anna and, surprise, one of my older uncles, have begun to come up about Lauren's history of desertion. The family group chat has devolved into a battle zone. Jake's art teacher suggested submitting his fortress artwork to a child art competition centered on emotional expression. She sees it as an outlet for him to express his emotions via art. Jake agreed, but asked that the drawing be modified first. He put a figure to the top of the fortress, someone maintaining watch. When I asked about it, he simply replied, "That's you." Work has been my refuge through it all. My staff has been extremely accommodating, allowing me to adapt my schedule as needed for legal meetings and treatment visits. My manager even connected me to another colleague who had gone through a similar adoption process. Their guidance has proven useful. Jake and Lauren had their first supervised video call today. It was brief and awkward. He showed her some of his most recent artwork, but her attempts to reminisce about their time together just made him withdraw. Later, he spent hours in his art room creating robot armies. The therapist claims that this is his way of protecting himself. I've begun chronicling everything, every interaction with Lauren, every family message, and every event. My lawyer believes it's critical for retaining custody. It can feel weird at times to keep track of my own family's attempts to undermine Jake's stability. The most difficult thing is watching Jake battle with conflicting loyalties. He shouldn't have to deal with this much intricacy at his age. But yesterday, when he asked whether he could start calling me mom, I learned that family can be established in the midst of chaos. Update 5. Jake's art teacher entered one of his works into a regional competition without notifying him. He won first place. When she mentioned it in class, the other students applauded. The tournament organizers intended to highlight his work in a special assembly and give him an award. Jake was scared to speak in front of everyone, but he was determined to do it. The morning of the assembly, he donned the button-up shirt we had chosen jointly, fidgeting with its sleeves. When they announced his name, he approached the podium, clutching his latest sketchbook. His voice shook at first, but it strengthened as he spoke. Art allows me to say things that I cannot say aloud. It makes me feel less alone. The scene was ideal, until Lauren emerged in the back of the auditorium. I saw her first. She appeared unstable and disturbed. Before I could intercede, she began making her way to the platform, calling Jake's name. The school security responded immediately, but not before she yelled allegations about me wrecking their family. Jake froze on stage, his words forgotten. I approached him just as his art instructor was taking him away from the pandemonium. Later, in the stillness of his art room, he worked discreetly on a new piece. A dark, swirling composition that revealed much about his emotional state. That incident was the final straw. Lauren's behavior at school served as evidence in the subsequent emergency court session to get a permanent restraining order. The judge also granted my request to limit her interaction to written communication, which would be reviewed by Jake's therapist. My parents' reactions were predictable. They bombarded social media with posts about how I'd manipulated the system and stolen Jake from his real family, but their campaign failed spectacularly when Anna intervened. She shared a thorough narrative of how the family had ignored Jake's demands for years, including screenshots of earlier messages dismissing his predicament. The truth quickly spread throughout our neighborhood. Other parents at Jake's school began sharing anecdotes about how he had helped their children feel more confidence in their own artwork. His art teacher documented his improvement and the great impact he made on other children. Even my company's CEO, who had met Jake during our virtual Bring Your Kid to Work day, sent a public statement of support. We conducted an art display in our backyard yesterday, which was Jake's idea. He invited his pals from school, neighbors, and even some of his former foster brothers. The theme was building new worlds, which is his specialty. As guests passed through the improvised gallery, I noticed Jake confidently explaining his artwork, which would have been inconceivable a year ago. Mrs. Thompson assisted him in organizing the pieces chronologically, beginning with his early robot sketches and progressing to his most recent works. The development was striking. From hard, mechanical forms to more fluid, emotional compositions. His most recent drawing, which was prominently displayed, depicted a group of people making something together. "It's about choosing your family," he told the tourists. My parents drove past during the show but did not stop. "It does not hurt anymore. We've created something stronger than their judgment, a family defined by choice rather than obligation." Jake's most recent school report demonstrates development in all subjects, and his art portfolio has been accepted into a prominent summer program. The fortress drawing that created so much turmoil is now displayed in our living room. Jake recently added windows, gardens, and open gates. "It's still strong," he explained. "But it's also a home." Tonight, as I went through congratulatory notes from the art show, Jake glanced up and stated, "I never have to pack up my art supplies anymore." It wasn't only about the goods. We both knew it. It was about finding a sense of belonging and establishing roots. Our family may not look like what my parents had envisioned, but it is real in our own. Every drawing on our walls represents a piece of our story. My brother got my fiancée pregnant before our wedding. My family wants to forgive me, but I cut ties and moved away. This is going to be a long story, and it's exactly as strange as it sounds. I will try to be as concise as possible, but there is a lot to discuss. I don't care if anyone believes this or not. It's so ridiculous that I have to rant. Also, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, but I'll leave out any details that could identify me to anyone unfamiliar with the situation. I'm 32 years old, and up until a few months ago, I was engaged to my girlfriend of 5 years, Sarah. My younger brother Mike is 29 years old and has always been our family's golden child. To properly understand the seriousness of this betrayal and why it affected me so hard, I need to provide some context for our family dynamics and how we reached this point. Growing up, Mike could do no wrong in our parents' eyes, whereas I was continually admonished and punished for little offenses. This was not your average sibling rivalry or subtle partiality. It was outright and intense. If Mike broke something, I'd be accused. If he began a fight, I would be grounded. If we both got straight A's, Mike would get a new video game console, and I'd get a pat on the back and a reminder to keep it up. Our parents, Tom and Linda, were constantly making excuses for their favoritism. Mike's younger. He needs more attention. You're the older one, you should know better. Mike's just more sensitive, we have to be careful with him. The constant barrage of unreasonable standards and gaslighting made me feel useless and disliked in my own home. As we grew older, the favoritism became more obvious. And when I was accepted to a good college on a partial scholarship, my parents barely mentioned it. When Mike opted to attend community college, they gave him a big party and purchased him a car for commuting. Never mind that I had been biking 5 miles each way to my part-time job for several years. I moved out as quickly as possible to get away from the harmful surroundings. I supported myself in college by working 2 jobs and taking out loans. Meanwhile, Mike dropped out of community college after just 1 semester, claiming that it wasn't for him. Our parents commended him for knowing himself, rather than conforming to societal expectations. They even backed his string of unsuccessful business projects over the years, regardless of how badly planned or hopeless they were. No matter how much distance I tried to build, my family was always able to pull me back in. Holiday dinners were a nightmare of subtle insults and less than subtle comparisons. Are you still in that entry-level position? Well, Mike is thinking of starting another business. He's very entrepreneurial. Never mind that I was slowly developing a secure job while Mike squandered our parents' retirement savings. Despite everything, I attempted to keep contact with Mike. He was still my brother after all. However, it was always one-sided. I'd reach out to connect, but he'd either ignore me or find a way to make the conversation competitive. If I was promoted, Mike would suddenly have a large opportunity come up. If I began dating someone, Mike would undoubtedly be in a serious relationship. I met Sarah while trying to reunite with Mike. She was a friend of one of Mike's brief romantic relationships, and we hit it off right away. Sarah was everything I wanted in a partner: intelligent, amusing, caring, and breathtakingly gorgeous. We started dating, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely satisfied and cherished. My folks, however, were not delighted. They made snide jokes about Sarah being out of my league, and questioned what she saw in me. Mike, on the other hand, took an uncommon interest in my life. He was always asking about Sarah, wanting to know everything about her. At the moment, I was simply relieved that he appeared to be interested in something in my life. Looking back, I should have seen the red flags. Sarah and I moved in together after a year of dating, and it was great. We both had successful careers, traveled much, and discussed our future plans. For the first time, I began to believe that I could have the life I had always desired. A successful profession, a loving partner, and possibly children someday. On our 4th anniversary, I proposed to Sarah. It wasn't anything extravagant, just a nice supper at home and a moving speech. I was overjoyed when she said yes. We planned on having a long engagement and taking our time planning the wedding. We weren't in a hurry, we had our entire lives ahead of us, or so I believed. When we informed my family of our engagement, their emotions were diverse, to say the least. My mother put on a fake smile and said, "Oh, how nice," in a tone that implied it was anything but. My father grunted and said, "Good luck with that," before returning to his television. Mike had the oddest reaction. He congratulated us, but his smile was unnerving, almost predatory. I disregarded it at the time, attributing it to my own fears. The following year was dominated by wedding preparations and job stress. Sarah and I were both working hard hours to save for our wedding and a down payment on a home. We weren't seeing each other as much as we used to, but I figured it was simply a phase. Every relationship has difficulties, right? Looking back, I should have noticed the symptoms. Sarah became distant, always on her phone, smiling at texts she dismissed as coming from work friends. She began going out more with her friends, returning home late and smelling of booze and cologne. I still trusted her entirely. I never imagined her cheating, let alone with my own brother. Sarah began to behave strangely a few months ago. She was temperamental, angry, and frequently nauseated. I was excited about the chance that she was pregnant. We hadn't been trying, but we had discussed having children someday. I began brainstorming methods to help her, such as nursery colors and baby names. Then, one night, she sat me down, tears running down her cheeks, and delivered the bombshell. She was pregnant, but the baby was not mine. I was stunned. Yes, we hadn't been intimate much lately because of our tight schedules, but I never anticipated her to cheat. When I asked who the father was, she broke down and muttered, "It's Mike." My entire universe came crumbling down at that point. Everything I thought I knew, everything I had based my existence on, was shattered. I couldn't breathe or think because I was overcome with feelings of betrayal and grief. Sarah attempted to explain, her words falling out between sobs. Apparently, it began during our engagement party. Mike had approached her, saying she was making a mistake by marrying me. He used her weaknesses, telling her she deserved better and that he could offer her everything I couldn't. It wasn't a one-time event, they'd been having an affair for months. I kicked Sarah out that night. I couldn't stomach looking at her or being in the same room as the lady who had deceived me so totally. She begged me to forgive her, saying it was a mistake and she loved me. But all I could think about was how many times she had lied to me, slept with my brother, and done so while wearing the ring I had given her. After Sarah departed, I confronted Mike. I can't recall what I said. It was all a swirl of wrath and pain. At first, he tried to dismiss it as a drunken mistake that didn't mean anything. But when I questioned him, he grew defensive, saying, "Well, maybe if you'd been a better fiancé, she wouldn't have come to me." I saw red. I got in my car and headed to his apartment, intending to make him regret what he said. I'm not sure what I was planning to accomplish, but when I arrived, our parents were already present. Mike presumably called them first, telling them about Sarah seducing him and apologizing. And you know what? They believed him. They always do. My mother immediately began lecturing me about forgiveness and family, while my father stood there with his arms crossed, obviously disappointed in me but not in his beloved Mike. I tried to explain what had happened, but they refused to listen. They kept encouraging me to forgive Mike and support Sarah during her pregnancy because family comes first. I lost it. Years of pent-up hatred and anger finally came out. I told them how I felt about their strange sense of dedication, how they had always preferred Mike over me and had never taken my side or backed me. I informed Mike that he was no longer my brother, that he had died for me. I told my parents they could have the son they'd always wanted because they no longer had me. I stormed away, ignoring their shouts and pleads. I traveled for hours without a destination in mind, simply wanting to get away from everything and everyone. When I finally arrived home, I saw dozens of missed calls and messages. Sarah begged for another opportunity, and Mike alternated between apologies and accusations. Most of the messages, however, came from my parents, who demanded that I grow up and make amends. I disregarded them all. I rarely ate or slept. I called out of work, using up all of my vacation days. I couldn't face anyone or bear the thought of explaining what had happened. I just sat in my apartment, going over every detail of my relationship with Sarah and every encounter with Mike, trying to find out where I went wrong. It has been 3 months now. To cope with everything, I moved to a new apartment, changed my phone number, and began treatment. But my family refuses to quit up. Despite my efforts to break off communication, they continue to intrude into my life. They've started coming up at my office, hoping to ambush me and demand a reconciliation. My mother approaches me in the parking lot, sobbing about how I'm tearing the family apart. My father leaves scathing voicemail messages, imploring me to man up and forgive Mike. Mike himself has attempted to approach me multiple times, but I have managed to dodge him thus far. They've even used flying monkeys, extended family members dressed as concerned parties, to guilt-trip me into forgiving Mike. Aunts, and cousins I haven't spoken to in years suddenly phone, reminding me how important family is and how I should let bygones be bygones. It's as if they live in a parallel reality where Mike and Sarah made a minor mistake rather than a life-altering betrayal. I received a message from Sarah yesterday. She is keeping the baby and intends to co-parent with Mike. And guess what? My parents are pleased to become grandparents, conveniently ignoring the circumstances and the disparaging remarks they made about Sarah when she was with me. The letter was filled with apologies and explanations, including how she and Mike found real love amidst this horrific scenario. She even had the nerve to say that she hopes we can all become friends someday, for the sake of the child. I am at my wit's end. Part of me wants to break all links, relocate to another state, change my identity, and start again somewhere no one knows about this mess. But another part of me is so angry that I want to stay and fight, to show them how twisted the situation is. I do not know what to do. This betrayal has affected every aspect of my life. I cannot take being alone with my thoughts. I haven't even considered dating again because the thought of trusting someone like that scares me. I've also lost friends as a result of this. Those who believe I should take the high road and reconcile with my family, as if I'm the bad person for refusing to play happy families with the people who have caused me the most pain. The thought of Sarah and Mike raising a kid together, a child who should have been mine, is like a constant knife in my gut. I understand, cognitively, that the child is innocent in all of this. It's not the baby's fault that its parents are liars and cheaters. But I can't force myself to feel happy about its presence. My parents have begun to consider how I should participate in the child's life and how I will become an uncle. The thought makes me feel physically uncomfortable. How can I look at this child without seeing the ultimate emblem of my brother's betrayal? So, Reddit, my question is, am I an idiot for not forgiving my brother and ex-fiancé? Is it wrong to want to lose connections with my family over this? Any advice on how to proceed would be highly welcomed, as I feel as if I am drowning in a sea of deception and gaslighting. I apologize for this lengthy post. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. Writing it all out has been cathartic in a way. I'm not sure what I'm hoping to achieve by sharing this. Validation, wisdom, or simply the opportunity to scream into the void and have someone, anybody hear me. Edit. Oh my God, this blew up overnight. Thank you all for your assistance and advice. I'm astounded by the response, and it will take me some time to get through all of the comments. However, I wanted to answer a few typical queries. Yes, I have contacted a lawyer about obtaining a restraining order against my family. It is currently in progress. I do not intend to have any contact with the baby. It is not the child's fault, but I cannot become involved without losing my mind. For those who are curious about my work, I have already spoken with HR about the matter. They are aware and supportive. They've increased security at the front desk and given me the option of working from home more regularly. I am grateful for their understanding. Many of you have inquired whether I had contemplated moving to another city or state. It is definitely something I am thinking about. My company has offices in several other cities, so a transfer could be possible. I'm considering the advantages and cons. To those suggesting a DNA test, Sarah has admitted to the affair, and the timeline is congruent. I see no reason to believe the child is not Mike's. Even if it were my child, I doubt I could ever look at him without thinking about this treachery. The sheer number of people who have had comparable experiences has overwhelmed me. It's sad to understand how common this type of betrayal is, but it's also weirdly reassuring to know I am not alone. Thank you for sharing your stories. To the individual who inquired whether I had explored legal action against Mike for alienation of affection, I looked into it, but it is not recognized in my state. Even if it were, I doubt I have the energy for a judicial struggle right now. Several people have noted that Mike's behavior appears narcissistic. I've started reading about narcissistic personality disorder, and a lot of it rings true. It helps me comprehend, but it does not justify his conduct. Those inquiring about Sarah's relatives are as startled and outraged as one would imagine. They have stopped communicating with her and have reached out to offer me their support. It's a minor comfort, but I value it. To the person who inquired if I'd ever considered having my own children. To be honest, this entire experience has made me rethink if I even want a family. I'm trying not to make any big decisions while I analyze everything. I'll keep you posted if something big happens, but for now, my priority is to recuperate and move forward. Thanks again, Reddit. You have helped more people than you realize. Your support and recommendations have given me a lot to think about, and they've really been a lifeline during this difficult time. I may not be able to answer every remark, but please know that I read them all and they have helped me feel less alone. Update. Hello Reddit. It's been nearly 2 weeks since my previous post, and it has been a roller coaster. First and foremost, thank you for your invaluable assistance and guidance. I didn't anticipate my post to go viral. Reading through all of your answers has been upsetting and somehow reassuring. It's disturbing how regular this type of deception is. The past few weeks have been really hard. Remember how I mentioned that I was working on getting a restraining order? That became a tremendous ordeal. My lawyer had filed the papers, and we had a hearing planned. I assumed it would be simple given the proof and the constant harassment, but I was mistaken. My parents arrived to court with their own lawyer, a high-powered attorney dressed in an expensive suit who most likely costs more per hour than I do in a week. They attempted to portray me as the insane one, claiming I was ripping the family apart over a simple misunderstanding, as if Mike had stumbled and fell into my fiancé. Fortunately, the judge did not buy it. She issued the restraining order against Mike and my parents, but only after my mother sobbed in court and my father stared at me as if I had committed murder. Mike's reaction, however, I swear, if looks could kill, I wouldn't have left the courthouse alive. As we were leaving, Mike attempted to approach me, but my lawyer intervened, reminding him of the newly issued restraining order. Mike simply scoffed and stated, "This isn't over. You can't hide behind a piece of paper forever." I'd be lying if I said his remarks didn't make me uncomfortable, but at least I have some legal protection now. My job situation has also been a nightmare. Remember when I mentioned my family visiting my workplace? It all culminated last week. I was at a client meeting when my assistant alerted me to the fact that my mother was raising a disturbance in the foyer. Apparently, she had brought a photo album and was showing my coworkers baby images of Mike and me while crying about how close her boys used to be. When I arrived downstairs, I found her surrounded by several uneasy-looking colleagues. She was in the middle of telling a story about Mike and me bathing together when we were toddlers. When she recognized me, she attempted to approach me, babbling about organizing a baby shower. I cut her off, telling her she had to go immediately or I'd call the cops for trespassing and breaching the restraining order. Her expression looked as if I had smacked her, but after everything they had put me through, I couldn't care. Security let her out, and I spent the next hour coordinating with my boss and coworkers to minimize the damage. Most of them understood, but I could tell some were concerned about the drama I was bringing into the office. But it was the interaction with Mike that truly threw me off course. Last Saturday, I was in the gym, trying to let out my rage on the punching bag. I was so absorbed that I didn't realize someone was approaching until I heard his voice. I looked back, and there was Mike, smirking at me as if he hadn't just broken the restraining order. He began shouting loudly, making sure everyone nearby could hear. I ordered him to go before I contacted the cops, but he laughed and said he was going to tell them I had threatened him and Sarah. That's when I lost it. I struck at him, landing a punch squarely on his jaw. He stumbled back, then pounced at me. We ended up on the floor, trading blows like children again, but this time, there were no parents to separate us, no one instructing me to be the bigger person, and let Mike win. I managed to land a couple decent hits before the gym staff intervened. Mike's nose was bleeding, and I could feel my face swell. We were both shrieking, attempting to break free and go at each other again. The gym manager threatened to call the cops, which ultimately shook me out of it. I grabbed my belongings and fled. I was driving home, still shivering from the adrenaline rush, when I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I responded. Sarah was shouting at me about breaking Mike's nose and suggesting he would require surgery. I couldn't stop giggling. Sarah being unhappy with me after what they had done was plain ludicrous. I sarcastically apologized if I irritated her little boyfriend, whom she had been sleeping with behind my back for months. She started crying, moaning about how frightened she was, how the baby could feel her suffering, and how I was so selfish. I hung up and blocked her phone. The consequences of the brawl were serious. The news traveled quickly within our social circle. My phone was inundated with texts from friends and relatives, some of whom were supportive, while others chastised me for assaulting my poor, defenseless brother. Sarah's parents contacted me again, expressing their support for me as well as displeasure in their daughter. It was a minor consolation, but at this point, I'll take what I can. The restraining order does not seem enough anymore. Mike has already demonstrated his willingness to violate it, and I am truly afraid about what he may do next. The legal consequences have been a nightmare. My lawyer contacted me the day after the gym incident to inform me that Mike had filed assault charges against me. I described how Mike broke the restraining order and provoked me. My lawyer groaned and said we'd fight it, but it might be a tough struggle because I threw the first punch. We are in the process of filing charges against Mike for breaking the restraining order. My lawyer believes that this will strengthen our case, but nothing is assured. I've had to give police statements, show them my facial and knuckle injuries, and explain why I was defending myself against my own brother. The entire process is humiliating. To make matters worse, Mike and I have been permanently barred from the gym. While I don't blame them, it's terrible because the gym was one of the only locations where I could express my anger in a healthy manner. My cousin Amy, with whom I've always been close, called me lately. She's been under a lot of pressure from her family to support me, but she's standing firm. She explained what had been going on behind the scenes. Apparently, my parents have been telling everyone that I'm having a mental breakdown. They claim that Sarah and Mike's relationship began after Sarah and I split up, and that I'm simply envious and unwilling to move on. According to Amy, the majority of the family is suspicious, but some are buying into the story. It's infuriating to know they're spreading lies about me while I'm still trying to recuperate. Work has been difficult, to say the least. After the event with my mother generating a disturbance in the lobby and the argument with Mike becoming viral on local social media, I can see my coworkers are nervous around me. Earlier this week, my manager summoned me to his office. He began by saying he regarded me as an employee and recognized that I was going through a difficult time. Then he dropped the bombshell. He proposed that I take a leave of absence until things settled down. He referred to it as a personal sabbatical, paid, of course, but it was evident that the decision had been taken. I wanted to fight, tell him that work was the only thing keeping me sane right now, but I knew it would be fruitless. I agreed, thanked him for his understanding, and began to pack up my office. As I was leaving, I overheard two coworkers whispering about how my brother got my fiancée pregnant. I slammed my office door louder than required as I walked out, taking some tiny joy in seeing them jump. I would be lying if I said none of this bothered me. I've begun taking long trips at night just to get out of my flat. Sometimes I find myself parked outside my old house, the one I shared with Sarah, wondering how my life became so messed up. In the midst of all this commotion, I found comfort from an unexpected source. Sarah's younger sister Emma. She messaged me on social media, apologizing for her sister's actions and offering her support. At first, I was skeptical. What if it was all a trick? But after speaking with her, I understood she was equally outraged by Sarah's acts as I was. Emma has kept me informed about Sarah and Mike's lives. They appear to have moved in together, living as if they did not wreck several lives in order to be together. Emma claims Sarah is attempting to portray herself as the victim, crying to anybody who will listen about how she never meant to hurt anyone, and that she and Mike are soulmates who found each other against all odds. It makes me sick to my stomach, but I appreciate Emma keeping me updated. After all, information is power, even if it is knowledge that I would rather not have. The social media impact has been a nightmare. I've always been a quiet person, but this event has thrust me into an unwelcome limelight. Someone, most likely one of Mike's friends, posted about our feud on a local Facebook page. The post did not identify our names, but it recounted the situation in enough detail that anyone who knows us might figure it out. The comments section became a battleground. Some individuals defended me, claiming Mike received what he deserved. Others classified me as unstable and said I ought to be locked away. I made a terrible mistake by reading some of the comments one night after too many beers. I threw my phone across the room so forcefully that the screen cracked. Since then, I've deleted the majority of my social media profiles. I can't handle the continuous notifications and messages from people I haven't spoken to in years, all of whom suddenly want to know the juicy details of my personal life. With everything that has happened, I have realized that I cannot stay in this city any longer. There are too many memories and opportunities to run into Sarah, Mike, or my parents. I've started looking into internal transfers at my company, and there's a promising opportunity in our Seattle office. It's not ideal, I've never liked the continual rain, but at this point, I'd go to the moon to get away from all of this upheaval. I haven't made any final decisions yet, but the prospect of a new beginning is growing more appealing. A new city, a new apartment, and a new life where no one recognizes me as the person whose brother cheated on his fiancée. My parents have remained abnormally silent since the restraining order was imposed. I'm simply waiting for the other shoe to drop, for them to find a new method to force their way back into my life. Meanwhile, Sarah has been spreading the word about her pregnancy far and wide. Emma tells me she's been posting continuous updates on social media, including ultrasound photographs, belly shots, and messages about how blessed she and Mike are and how thrilled they are to start their family. Each new update feels like a fresh wound, triggering the pain just as I thought I was beginning to recover. So that is where things stand. 2 weeks ago, I believed my life couldn't get any worse, yet it has. I am still angry and wounded, but also exhausted. I am tired of justifying myself. Reddit, I suppose this is less of an update and more of a cry into the void. I'm not sure what I'm asking for anymore, advice, pity, or perhaps a time machine to prevent me from ever introducing Sarah to my brother. Whatever happens next, I will attempt to keep you all updated. Your encouragement meant more to me than you understand. It's comforting to be reminded that there are still good individuals in the world, even when everything appears to be full of betrayal and deception. Hello, Reddit. It's been a week since my last update, and I'm here with what I hope to be my final post about this calamity. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone for their assistance and advice along this journey. Your messages have been a lifeline at the darkest days in my life. A lot has happened in just 7 days, and I'm still trying to digest everything. I guess I'll start with the major news. I'm moving. Yes, I took the risk and accepted a transfer to our Seattle location. It wasn't an easy decision, but with everything that had transpired, I realized I needed a new beginning. The choice came following a particularly difficult day last week. I had just returned from another meeting with my lawyer over Mike's assault allegations when I noticed a message in my mailbox. It came from Sarah. I nearly threw it out, but curiosity got the best of me. Inside, there was an ultrasound photo and a handwritten letter expressing her and Mike's joy over their baby. She said she hoped I could find it in my heart to be pleased for them and that their child would be overjoyed to have me as an uncle. I saw red. Before I knew it, I had cleared Sarah's phone number and contacted her. She picked up on the second ring, so I let loose. I told her precisely how I felt about her, Mike, and their beautiful little family. I told her she was insane if she thought I'd ever want anything to do with that child, and that she, Mike, and the baby could all go to hell. It wasn't my best moment, but it felt liberating to finally express all I'd been keeping back. That night, I realized I couldn't live in this city any longer. I called my supervisor and informed him that I wanted to relocate to Seattle. To my surprise, he appeared relieved, probably concerned about how all of this drama would reflect on the organization. He promised to expedite the papers, and by the next morning, it was official. I had 2 weeks to collect my belongings and relocate across the nation. My family and social circle were quick to learn about my move. Unsurprisingly, my folks were furious. They turned up uninvited to my flat, defying the restraining order once more, to try to persuade me not to go. My mother cried, accusing me of abandoning the family, while my father raged at me for being selfish and immature. I didn't participate. I contacted the police and had them removed for breaking the injunction. My mother shouted as they were let out, telling me that I would regret it, that family is everything, and that I was wasting it. I slammed the door and returned to packing. Mike did not contact me directly, likely due to ongoing legal issues, but he did write a lengthy statement on social media. He talked about how some people can't handle seeing others happy, and how he and Sarah were rising above the hate to focus on their new family unit. It was plainly directed at me. I'll admit it hurt to see how many people liked and commented on his behalf, but I told myself that their opinions are meaningless because they don't know the truth. Sarah's remark was the most unexpected. Following our phone talk, she confided in her sister Emma, who has been keeping me updated on their condition. Emma informed me Sarah had a breakdown, stating she knew what she and Mike had done was wrong and was frightened of the future. My cousin Amy, bless her, offered to help me pack. While we worked, she told me more about what was going on in her family. Apparently, my aunt, my mother's sister, had a furious dispute with my mother. She accused her of consistently preferring Mike and pushing me away. She even informed my parents that they were reaping the repercussions of their years of favoritism. I won't lie, it felt good to hear that someone in the family was finally calling them out. My lawyer promised me that my move would have no effect on the pending legal dispute. We're still pursuing charges against Mike for breaking the restraining order, and we're fighting the assault allegations he made against me. My lawyer feels certain that the judge will see through Mike's lies, especially given his history of violating the injunction. Moving across the nation may potentially help our case, as it demonstrates that I am not a threat to Mike and have no intention of dealing with him. I'm not sure if I will post another update after this. Part of starting over is leaving the past behind, and as helpful as this group has been, I believe it is time for me to move on from this sad chapter. I need to focus on creating a new life rather than obsessing on the past. So, I guess this is it. Wish me luck, Reddit. I have a whole new life ahead of me in Seattle, and I plan to make the most of it. Thank you for staying with me throughout this. Your help has been tremendous, and it's reassuring to know that there are still good people out there, even in a world filled with betrayal and deception. My wife won $9 million, filed for divorce, and kicked me out, but she forgot the prenup her parents forced me to sign before marriage. My wife won a $9 million lottery, filed for divorce, and kicked me out, but she forgot about the prenup that her parents compelled me to sign before our marriage. I am from a humble family. My parents live in a quiet suburb, and I grew up in a little 3-bedroom house that always smelled like fresh laundry and homemade food. After high school, I worked a variety of odd jobs, including bartending, helping at my uncle's hardware store, and eventually managing a local sporting goods store. It was not glamorous, but it was genuine. My wife, on the other hand, came from a world that I had never known. Her parents owned several properties, drove expensive automobiles, and threw enormous, extravagant parties a few times every year. Let's name my father-in-law Phil, and my mother-in-law Maëlle. Maëlle was a tall, imposing figure who exudes quiet power in every setting. He'd make casual comments that seemed more like disguised threats or manipulations. Maëlle was also good at gently expressing disapproval. Just one raised eyebrow could make others shrink. They were never blatantly nasty in front of me, but I could always sense their displeasure behind the polite talk. After my wife and I got engaged, I learned how much her parents feared that outsiders would take their family assets. They treated me like an intruder, despite the fact that my wife and I had been dating for years. Before we could set a wedding date, Phil insisted that I sign a prenuptial agreement. I didn't have the money to fight it legally, and I was too consumed by love. I kept telling myself it was a symbolic gesture to placate her parents. Isn't love the only promise I needed? The day I signed is very clear in my mind. It was a warm afternoon in her parents' huge house. Mel spread down the document and slipped a pen in my direction. He gave me coffee, almost as if it were a regular business transaction. My wife stood to the side and said little. That hurt, but I dismissed it, assuming it wouldn't matter in the long term. The contract stated that any gifts, inheritances, or trust funds from her family remained her own property. However, any big item we acquired together, such as a house or lottery winnings, would be marital property. That seemed unusual to me, but all I wanted was to marry her. 6 months later, we married in a beautiful lakeside wedding. My parents were overwhelmed by the luxury yet remained supportive. My father's expression was tense as he greeted my in-laws. He'd always taught me to trust my instincts, but I assumed love would remove any doubts. The first several years passed without any noteworthy incidents. We resided in a condominium that her parents helped us get. I made monthly payments on the mortgage, despite the fact that the down payment came from her father's gift. Looking back, it was never actually a gift, but rather a tool for controlling us. But back then, I assumed that this was how wealthy families operated. Our marriage had the normal money squabbles and occasional outbursts about our parents interfering with our decisions. They'd arrive unexpectedly, bring new furniture or decor, and occasionally reorganize our entire living space without notice. My wife would dismiss my frustration, blaming it on her parents' supportive nature. Then came the day that everything flipped upside down. My wife called me, ecstatic, to tell me she had won a $9 million lottery prize with a random ticket she purchased at a petrol station. At first, I was overjoyed, fantasizing about quitting our jobs and exploring the world, but my excitement gradually faded. She insisted we keep it a secret, even from my parents. She got strangely paranoid, talking about claiming the money correctly and meeting with lawyers I'd never met before. When I asked to attend these meetings, she told me I'd be out of place, which stung. I had no idea the main surprise was about to occur. One afternoon, I returned home from work fatigued to discover her searching through drawers with her aunt. She casually announced that she was filing for divorce and instructed me to pack my bags and leave the apartment, which she claimed was under her name. I was floored. Sure, I paid monthly mortgage payments, but she clearly thought her father's original down payment and her newfound wealth rendered me useless. I felt my heart break. I contacted my father, my voice cracking, and told him I had just been booted out of my own home. It was the ultimate treachery. The biggest shock came next. I learned that my father-in-law had sent his personal attorney to protect her. They wanted me out so they could keep the lotto earnings separate from me. Except they'd forgotten the provisions of the prenuptial agreement they'd forced on me. Instead of completely protecting their daughter, it declared that any windfall obtained during marriage counted as a shared asset. I then understood that if they insisted on divorce me immediately after winning the jackpot, they might not be able to keep anything. I decided to go cautiously. My father advised me to remain calm, hire a lawyer outside their social circle, and prepare for a nasty struggle. I was determined not to fold. They'd thrown down the gauntlet, treating me like a disposable annoyance. If they believed I'd walk away peacefully, they were greatly mistaken. I spent a few nights at my folks' house, attempting to process the shock. My mother was furious, shouting about how rude my in-laws had been from the beginning. My father, while also outraged, remained pragmatic. He contacted an old buddy, a family law attorney, and scheduled an appointment for me first thing in the morning. Sitting in that attorney's office, I felt a mixture of rage and relief. I told him about how my in-laws insisted on the prenup, how my wife had earned $9 million, and how she then surprised me with divorce. He chuckled as he reviewed the prenuptial agreement. They shot themselves in the foot, he told me. They specifically included language that lumps lottery winnings under marital assets. Unless a judge does some wild legal interpretation, you're entitled to a substantial portion. This was a lifeline for me. I was scared the prenup would keep me out, but it turned out that their fear of me claiming inherited wealth outweighed the potential of a jackpot scenario. My lawyer cautioned that it would not be simple. My in-laws were wealthy, well-connected, and likely to deploy a large legal team, but he believed we had a good case, especially given I had contributed financially to the marriage and had been unceremoniously evicted from our shared residence. I inquired about the divorce proceedings in our state. A disputed divorce can last months or longer, but if my wife's side realizes they are on shaky ground, they may seek an early settlement. The lawyer warned that they would use intimidation or underhanded tactics to persuade me to give away my rights cheaply. Within a few days, my father-in-law left me a frightening message, asking me to back off since I deserved nothing from his daughter. He claimed that if I sought to collect the lottery prizes, he would ensure that I received nothing. My lawyer just instructed me to document everything. Then, my mother-in-law cornered me outside my parents' house, suggesting a pathetic, silent exit. She portrayed it as a fantastic bargain, but it wasn't even enough to cover half of my mortgage payments. I declined, stating we'd see each other in court. She scoffed, perplexed by my refusal, obviously unaccustomed to anyone refusing her money. With negotiations at a deadlock, my lawyer filed petitions to prevent the lottery monies from being hidden or moved. That incensed my in-laws, who began spreading rumors about me being a gold digger who preyed on their young daughter. It stung, but I remained strong. My supervisor, who owned the sports goods store, had my back, dismissing my father-in-law's attempts to interfere with my employment. Friends took sides, some calling me petty, while others praised me for fighting back. The stress was unbearable, but I refused to succumb. We finally got a court date after several weeks of unsuccessful negotiations. My wife was not to be found. Personally, she was practically under her parents' protective wing, avoiding any direct communication with me. She let her lawyers do the talking, alleging I was a leech who gave nothing to the marriage. My lawyer objected, citing financial records, bill time sharing, and a specific prenuptial clause regarding windfalls. We also discussed how I had been violently kicked out of the condo. The judge directed both parties to prepare for a more formal hearing on asset partition. In one final attempt at intimidation, my father-in-law threatened my employer again, who swiftly instructed him to leave. That simply made my father-in-law angrier. My lawyer advised us to proceed carefully, but he was certain that a judge would see through their scare tactics. Nothing could have prepared me for the ultimate fight in court, but I knew the law was on my side, paradoxically, because to the very prenup they'd imposed on me. Weeks passed, and the anticipation for the approaching hearing reached fever pitch. My wife still avoided direct contact with me, but her lawyers inundated me with motions. They maintained that the lottery gain was separate property because she purchased the ticket, despite the fact that the prenup stated that any large windfall during marriage was marital. Meanwhile, my father-in-law attempted to ruin my reputation among friends and business acquaintances by spreading the myth that I was a gold digger who had married into the family purely for money. During this time, I had a combination of frustration and motivation. If they thought they could bully me out of my rights, they were mistaken. I had records that demonstrated how I contributed to our shared existence, such as electricity bills, groceries, and half mortgage payments. My attorney and I went over every element of the prenup. He highlighted a significant clause stating that any pecuniary windfalls, including but not limited to lottery or game show winners, are deemed marital assets unless expressly stated differently. It was as if my in-laws had accidentally left a back door open. A week before the hearing, we held a preliminary status conference. My wife arrived with her parents and a team of lawyers, 4 attorneys and a financial advisor. They looked at me with the same air of superiority, but their attitude softened when my lawyer quietly showed the prenuptial agreement, emphasizing the specific clause about lottery money. The judge listened attentively, appeared unimpressed by their attempts to dismiss the case, and ordered that all substantial assets be frozen until the main hearing. That same day, my mother-in-law cornered me outside the courthouse, insisting we speak like adults. She tried to provide a flat payment that was much lower than before, calling it generous for someone of my background. I refused again, telling her that we'd let the judge decide. She snapped that I was destroying the family, as if I had surprised her daughter with a divorce. The hypocrisy made my blood boil, but I remained calm. My lawyer had told me not to engage in heated confrontations that could be used against me later. Behind the scenes, I was terrified that my in-laws might try to hide the lottery earnings in hidden accounts. My lawyer, anticipating this possibility, filed court orders to block any substantial transfers. We also planned to have a forensic accountant ready in case we suspected them of hiding monies. My father-in-law's temper flared. He left me a voicemail calling me filthy and accusing me of taking the love from his daughter's life. It was lavish, given that they were the ones who kicked me out immediately after winning the lottery. As the hearing neared, I meticulously planned with my counsel. We practiced my statement to ensure I seemed calm and factual in court. I had papers of the prenup, receipts for the partially paid mortgage, and even texts from my wife confirming our joint bills. The lawyer advised me to make my replies succinct, but the evidence will speak for itself. If they attempted emotional theatrics, we would respond with precise documentation. On the morning of the hearing, I stood in front of the courthouse, my heart racing. My parents attended me for moral support, but they remained outside the courtroom. When the proceedings began, I noticed my wife seated near her father, both sporting stone-cold looks. Her mother lingered in the back, arms folded. My father-in-law's lawyers, dressed in glossy suits, were confident, maybe hoping that money and legal strength could overcome the facts. The judge, a severe woman in her 50s, didn't waste time. She invited each side to submit their arguments. My wife's main attorney attempted to portray me as a small contributor who had done little more than share the same living environment. They claimed the lottery purchase was a personal transaction made using her money. But my lawyer calmly reminded me that the prenup specifically includes such windfalls as marital property. We also have bank records indicating she had used our joint account card that day. When we presented the information, I noticed visible tension in my father-in-law's camp. The judge inquired whether they had any more paperwork indicating it was her personal money. They fumbled, claiming that the card had been used unintentionally or that it was her father's deposit into the account. But the statements clearly identified our names, not just hers. The judge took note, her attention going to them with anticipation. Eventually, my wife spoke. She said she never intended to upset me, and that her parents pushed for a divorce once the prize was won to protect family assets. She fumbled over her words, acknowledging she was under pressure but also attempting to excuse it by claiming that if anyone found out about the money, they would come after us. My lawyer inquired whether she consulted me before making these judgments. She admitted number. The judge's disdain was evident. By midday, it was evident that their prenuptial agreement was a double-edged sword. The exact document they'd used to isolate their money now threatened to put a large sum of lottery prizes in my hands. The court ordered a second hearing for final judgments, noting that she preferred to approach the lottery as a significant marital asset subject to equitable division. Outside, my father-in-law went by me, mumbling, "This is far from over," but his confidence was clearly shaken. Their desperation grew in the weeks before the ultimate verdict. My father-in-law's lawyers tried everything, submitting motions to revise the prenuptial agreement's terms, arguing the goal was not to include lottery winnings. The judge dismissed the motions, citing the plain text. My mother-in-law tried to corner me again, warning me that if I hurt their family, I would regret it. I told her straight up that they'd started this by pushing me out and surprising me with a divorce. My wife attempted to contact me, leaving an emotional voicemail expressing her desire for things to end amicably. She offered that if we just had a secret agreement, we might be able to recover some of our relationship. I would have considered it if they had treated me fairly from the beginning, but after the intimidation, falsehoods, and forced removal, my trust had evaporated. My lawyer warned me not to engage in these back-channel discussions. We had a strong legal position and no reason to settle for crumbs. Finally, the day for the final hearing arrived. The courtroom was filled with attorneys from both sides. My father, mother, and a few friends arrived to support me, sitting silently at the back. The judge took the bench, reviewed the amended documents, and approved final remarks. My father-in-law's lead lawyer took one final shot, portraying me as a crafty opportunist who uncovered the prenup's loophole after benefiting from the family's generosity. My lawyer responded with plain facts. 1. They compelled me to sign the prenuptial agreement. 2. It specifically mentioned the lottery or other windfall as shared property. 3. My father-in-law financed a portion of our condo, but I contributed monthly, so it was not a completely independent asset. Furthermore, the quick divorce petition following the prize was typical evidence of their plan to keep me from the rewards. The judge listened intently and then issued her decision. She stated that the lottery wins definitely fell under marital assets under the prenup's terms. She chastised my in-laws for attempting to pervert the agreement they had drafted. She also determined that my wife's abrupt expulsion of me from the condo was unfair, and that I was entitled to repayment for my share of the mortgage and marital contributions. In brief, the judge issued an order stating that I would receive a significant portion of the lottery winnings, as well as compensation for my condo part. We parted ways, with a finalization date set for a few weeks later just to complete papers. My father-in-law's expression was thunderous, and my mother-in-law was incensed, whispering fiercely to him. My wife stood there with tears in her eyes, either from genuine remorse or fury over the loss of so much money. I felt both vindication and grief. We used to love one another, but greed, parental influence, and their attempts to exploit me destroyed everything. In the aftermath, their lawyers attempted to provide a slightly changed settlement, most likely expecting I'd accept a lower figure to avoid more complications. My lawyer urged that we accept the judge's decision as is. We had no reason to cut it. The only concession I made was to give up any stake in the condominium. I never wanted to step foot in that place again. They cut me a check for an amazing amount. Was that half the jackpot? Not quite, but it was large enough to allow me to reconstruct my life comfortably. Throughout it all, I concluded that my in-laws, in their hubris, assumed that wealth would protect them from consequences. They did not expect me to fight back effectively. Ironically, the prenuptial agreement they insisted on became the tool that secured my part of the winnings. If there was ever poetic justice, this was it. My wife, as far as I know, is still under her parents' care. She's lost face in her social circle as a result of the chaos that ensued. Some common acquaintances have informed me she is grappling with guilt, but I doubt she would ever openly recognize her family's role in planning this. As a token of appreciation for their support, I used a portion of the settlement to assist my parents in upgrading their home. Another chunk was invested, and while the entire experience left me scarred, changing my perspective on trust, marriage, and money, I find comfort in knowing I remained firm. I refused to be bullied into taking table scraps. Although it was brutally painful, the end result felt like a victory over oppression. Now, free of my in-laws' deceptive grip, I'm moving on. I've returned to a simpler existence, which is oddly reminiscent of my pre-marriage days, but I'm stronger, wiser, and far from the naive man they thought they could steamroll. If they remember anything about me, it should be that they unintentionally provided me with the legal tool I needed to avoid going bankrupt. They launched the war, I completed it, and that concludes this chapter. My parents manipulated me for money, favored my sister, and excluded my son from Christmas while inviting other kids. I never imagined I'd be a widow at 34, but here I am, Dakota, sitting at my kitchen table at 7 a.m., trying to get my 7-year-old son ready for school while holding back tears. It's been 8 months since Mark died in an accident on the building site, but it feels like yesterday. The initial months following Mark's death were a flurry of paperwork, sorrow, and sleepless nights. I honestly don't know how I would have gotten through without Sarah and Jim, my in-laws. They've been total angels, getting Tommy up from school every day so I can concentrate on work. I stop by their house afterward to get him, and every time, they want to give me money. Sarah, really, I can't take this, I told her last week, holding back the envelope she attempted to sneak into my purse. Dakota, sweetie, we want to help, she insisted, her gentle gaze finding mine. We know the insurance company paid well, but your family. Let us do this. She's correct about the insurance. Following Mark's death, the firm paid out $300,000. With that and my job as a marketing manager, we're doing well financially, but it isn't about money for Sarah and Jim. It's about the love they offer us every day. If only my parents were half as supportive. Mom and Dad have always made it plain that my older sister Rachel was their favorite child, and now they prefer her children over Tommy. Last weekend was normal. Tommy was eager to see his grandparents, but Mom was already fussing about his questions after only 20 minutes. Why does the clock make that sound? Tommy inquired, pointing to their antique grandfather clock. How does it work inside? Dakota, can't you control him? Mom groaned and rolled her eyes. He's always asking questions about everything. Rachel's kids never give us this much trouble. Dad nodded in agreement and reached for his laptop. Here, Tommy, why don't you play some games instead? Look, I downloaded some new ones. Tommy, however, did not want to play games. He wanted to communicate, learn, and connect. Meanwhile, Rachel's 3 children sat in the corner, engrossed on their phones and barely noticing anyone's presence. And my parents portrayed this as the perfect behavior. I've learnt to bite my tongue. Growing up as the under-favored child, I became accustomed to these comparisons long ago. Now I just shake my head and remain mute when people compliment Rachel's parenting while condemning mine. At the very least, they help Tommy on occasion, such as watching him when I have late meetings or picking him up if both Sarah and Jim are busy. It was intended to be just another Tuesday dinner at my parents' home. The warning signs were present from the time I went in. Mom had prepared my favorite lasagna, which she generally only cooks when she wants something. Dad was particularly chatty, inquiring about work, Tommy, and pretty much everything. They were building toward something. I simply didn't know what. So, Dakota, Mom remarked gently as she cut her lasagna into beautiful squares. We've been meaning to ask you something. I took a sip of water to brace myself. How much was Mark's life insurance payout? The question struck me like a slap in the face. I nearly choked on my water, taken aback by such a forthright question about something so intimate. Perhaps it was the shock, or perhaps I was simply tired of hiding secrets from my parents, but I responded truthfully. About $300,000, I replied gently. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. Dad's head shot up so swiftly that I felt he could injure himself. They looked at me as if I had just declared I had won the jackpot. Well, Mom began, carefully setting down her fork. What are you planning to do with all that money? I could feel their expectations weighing down on me. I've invested it, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's for Tommy's future, his college education, maybe to help him buy an apartment when he's older. Mark and I always talked about. But that's years away, Dad said, waving his hand dismissively. You should be thinking about the present, Dakota. About yourself and your family. The way he stated family made it apparent he wasn't referring to Tommy. I recognized that tone. It was the same one they used to aid Rachel with her down payment for her house or to fund her extravagant wedding. You could do so much with that money now, Mom added, leaning forward eagerly. You could help your family, people who need it today, not save it all for some distant future that might not even. I'm not discussing my money anymore, I interrupted her, my voice harder than I wanted. The hush that followed was oppressive. They both sat back, Dad's expression clouded with displeasure, something I had seen so many times growing up. Mom squeezed her lips together in a thin line that always indicated difficulty. The rest of the dinner was spent in tight quiet, interrupted only by the scrape of forks against plates. I assumed that would be the end of it. Knowing my parents, I anticipated them to give me the silent treatment for at least a month. It was what they always did when I failed to meet their expectations. But to my astonishment, Mom called only a week later. We're having a family dinner on Sunday, she said, her voice as friendly as if nothing had happened. Rachel and the kids will be there too. You have to come, sweetie. Something in her tone made me apprehensive, but I consented. When I came on Sunday, Rachel was already there with her 3 children, all of whom were hooked to their phones as usual. As we sat down to lunch, she began ranting about rising costs, accumulating bills, and how difficult it was to make ends meet. These days, everything is just so expensive now, she complained, passing the potatoes. Your father and I barely have enough for a normal life anymore, Mom explained, drying her eyes with a handkerchief as she discussed rising grocery prices and electricity bills. Rachel cleared her throat and sat straighter. I've been thinking, she said, staring around the table with the same self-righteous attitude she'd had since we were children. Dakota and I should help Mom and Dad financially. I'll send them $500 every month. I wish I could do more, but you know how it is. Jack's the only one working, and with 3 kids? She paused, allowing that to sink in, before turning to me with a smile that did not reach her eyes. But you, Dakota, you should send them $1,000 monthly. Excuse me? I nearly choked on the water. Well, it makes sense, Rachel continued. You earn really well at your job, and you only have 1 child to support. Plus, with your situation, you have other income now. Rachel's careful avoidance of mentioning Mark's death made my blood boil. I wanted to shout that I was a widow, that I no longer had my husband's income to rely on, and that the other income she was talking to was intended for my son's future. But Mom was already clapping her hands with joy, and Dad was beaming like it was Christmas morning. Oh girls, Mom said. You don't know what this means to us. I sat there, divided between fury and amazement, witnessing my family's hopeful expressions. The words of refusal died in my throat. I'd spent my entire life trying to gain their approval, and now they were putting a price on it. Fine, I heard myself saying. I'll do it. The first transfer was the most painful. $1,000 was gone with a few clicks. I convinced myself it was worthwhile if it meant more family support for Tommy. But that fantasy quickly dissipated. Mom, could you pick Tommy up from school today? Sarah has a doctor's appointment and I have a late meeting. Oh honey, I'm so sorry, Mom's voice cracked over the phone. I've got such a headache today. You know how my migraines get. This became a pattern. There was always an explanation for why I required Tommy's assistance. Mom was too busy. She was exhausted. She had errands to run. Her back was acting up. Meanwhile, the $1,000 was automatically deducted from my account each month. One particularly unpleasant Thursday, after Mom claimed she couldn't care Tommy because she might be sick, I contacted Sarah in desperation. Of course, we'll pick him up, Sarah replied without hesitation. Jim's already heading to the school. He loves their little chats on the drive home. Tommy's been telling him all about their science project. I shut up the phone and sat at my desk, trying to hold back tears. $1,000 per month got me nothing but excuses from my own mother, whereas my mother-in-law dropped everything to help, without asking for a dime. December snuck up on me that year. We had always celebrated Christmas at my parents' house. It was a family tradition. Everyone came there to exchange gifts, share meals, and make memories. The call came exactly 1 week before Christmas. I was assisting Tommy with his homework when my phone lit up with Mom's number. "Dakota, honey," she began, using that syrupy sweet tone that always signaled terrible news. "About Christmas Eve. We've decided to do something different this year. We're having an adults-only party. No children allowed." The pencil I was holding broke in my hand. "What?" "It's just that we want to do something more sophisticated this year," Mom explained, as if she were talking about something as insignificant as changing dinner plans. "You know, wine, adult conversation." "But it's Christmas," I objected, stepping back so Tommy couldn't hear. "What am I supposed to do with Tommy?" "Oh, that's easy," she said, her voice light and dismissive. "You can leave him with Sarah and Jim. They'd love to have him, I'm sure. You'll come by around 7. After hanging up, I gazed at Tommy, who was still working on his arithmetic problems, blissfully unconscious that his grandmother had just canceled his Christmas invitation. My heart wrenched as I watched him concentrate on his multiplication tables, his tongue hanging out like Mark's did. I spent the following week debating what to do. The idea of celebrating without Tommy felt terrible, but canceling the family Christmas together seemed too dramatic. Finally, I came up with a solution. I'd leave Tommy with Sarah and Jim for a few hours, go to my parents' place to exchange gifts and greetings, and then return to properly celebrate with my in-laws and son. On Christmas Eve, I arrived at my parents' house alone, carrying a bag of nicely wrapped presents. The driveway was packed with cars, more than typical for our family gatherings. Walking up to the front door, I could hear laughter and Christmas music filling the cold December air. When I opened the door, the world appeared to tilt sideways. The house was crowded with relatives, aunts, uncles, and cousins, but that wasn't what stopped me in my tracks. Rachel's 3 children ran through the living room wearing paper crowns. Near the Christmas tree, I noticed my cousin Linda's children eating cookies. More children emerged in my line of sight, my cousin Mark's twins and my cousin Susan's teenager. The room suddenly felt too hot and too cramped. As the truth of the situation dawned on me, I stood in the doorway with the present bag hanging limply from my palm. This was not an adults-only party at all. My son was the only one who was not invited to the celebration. I stood paralyzed, my mind straining to comprehend the scene in front of me. My aunt was the first to see me. "Dakota, sweetheart," she exclaimed, rushing over to hug me. She then looked around expectantly. "Where's little Tommy? Don't tell me he's sick on Christmas Eve?" Before I could respond, my cousin Peter interjected. "Yeah, where's our favorite little scientist? Jake's been wanting to show him his new chemistry set." More relatives gathered around, all asking the same question. Where was Tommy? Why had I arrived alone? Each inquiry felt like a knife being twisted in my gut. I couldn't form words. I couldn't describe what I didn't comprehend. Through the bustle, I noticed my mother in the kitchen, placing cookies on a Christmas-themed tray as if everything were normal. As if she hadn't already omitted her sole grandson from a family event. "Excuse me," I managed to mutter, moving past my concerned family members. My feet took me to the kitchen on autopilot, rage rising with each stride. "Mom," I asked, my voice low and controlled. "Can we talk privately?" Something in my tone prompted her to put down the platter. I guided her into the corridor, away from inquisitive eyes and ears. "You told me this was an adults-only party," I responded, trying to keep my voice steady. "You specifically told me not to bring Tommy. So why are Rachel's kids here? Why are all the cousins' children here?" Mom fixed her Christmas sweater, avoiding my gaze. "Well, that's different." "Different how?" "Those children," she remarked, nodding vaguely toward the living room, "know how to behave at formal gatherings. They're well-mannered." I looked at her in bewilderment. Well-mannered? Tommy is one of the most polite children I know. His teachers praise his behavior constantly. Sarah and Jim always say, "Oh, Sarah and Jim," Mom said, rolling her eyes. "They spoil him. Encourage all those endless questions. The other children, they deserve to be here more. They know their place." As if on cue, a disturbance broke out in the dining area. Rachel's youngest kid, Kevin, had taken a bunch of deviled eggs and was hurling them at his sister. The eggs flew across the room, splattering on Emily's beautiful Christmas dress as she screamed. I returned to my mother, lifting an eyebrow. "Yes, I can clearly see their superior manners on display." Mom's expression tightened. That's just children being children. But when Tommy asks questions about how things work, that's unacceptable behavior? Don't be so dramatic, Dakota. He's fine with Sarah and Jim. I'm leaving, I said, turning toward the door. I'm going back to my son. Mom shrugged and examined her manicure. Fine. Leave if you want to make a scene, but put your gifts under the tree first, we're opening them after dinner. Something snapped within me. I stood there, looking at my mother's dismissive shrug. I walked into the center of the living room before I could think twice. I cleared my throat loudly, cutting through the festive music and conversation. Heads turned, conversations ended in mid-sentence, and all eyes were on me. Several of you have asked why I came alone tonight, I said, my voice stronger than I had anticipated. Why isn't Tommy here celebrating Christmas with his family? Rachel tried to approach me, but I held up my hand. Let me finish. I drew a breath and continued. I'm here alone because a week ago, Mom called and told me this was an adults-only party. I was specifically told not to bring Tommy. My aunt's voice broke through the hush. But, all the children are here. We had no idea there was a ban on children, Uncle Steve explained, puzzled. Mom walked forward, her cheeks heated. Dakota, this isn't the time. Oh, I think this is exactly the time, I said, my voice raising slightly. Because, you see, there wasn't really a ban on children. There was a ban on one child, my child. My son, who apparently isn't good enough for this family's Christmas celebration. The room erupted in murmuring. I witnessed surprised expressions, disapproving looks at my parents, and perplexed youngsters as the adult drama unfolded. But that's not even the best part, I remarked with a dry laugh. While my son isn't good enough to attend Christmas, I'm apparently good enough to send my parents $1,000 every month. And Rachel here sends $500. Rachel's husband Jack raised his head. Wait. What? $500? Rachel's cheeks drained of color as Jack turned to face her. You're sending your parents money every month? From where? Our account barely covers the bills as it is. Rachel's composure snapped. Her cheeks flushed scarlet as she stared at our parents and her husband. I never actually sent any money, she said. The room was stunned into silence. Mom and Dad asked me to say I was sending $500 so Dakota would agree to help them financially. They said if she thought I was contributing too, she'd feel obligated. The hush that ensued was deafening. I watched as my relatives' features softened as they realized what had happened, how my parents and sister had duped me into financially supporting them while ignoring my child from family gatherings. Aunt Caroline's words rang out sharply and clearly. Aunt Caroline's words rang out sharply and clearly. You scammed your own daughter out of thousands of dollars? You're nothing but scammers, using your own daughter like an ATM while treating her kid like dirt. That's low, even for you two. The gathering erupted in overlapping voices, with some expressing disdain and others demanding explanations. Rachel was attempting to explain herself to an increasingly enraged Jack, as my parents stood there, their carefully constructed facade falling around them. I raised my hand, drowning out the continued disputes around me. I have something else to say. The room became quiet again, and all eyes returned to me. Mom and Dad remained motionless before the Christmas tree, their faces ashen. Rachel was still explaining herself to Jack, but even they paused to listen. From this moment on, my voice was clear and firm. I will no longer be sending you any money. And I won't be maintaining any relationship with you or Rachel. I'm done. Without waiting for an answer, I turned and went out, leaving the bag of gifts at the door. The sound of the door closing behind me felt final, like the end of a chapter I should have concluded years ago. Sitting in my car, I took out my phone and accessed the banking app. With a few fast touches, I canceled the monthly transfer to my mother's account. It felt like severing a cord that had been dragging behind me for months. The journey to Sarah and Jim's residence seemed to take both forever and nothing at all. When I parked into their driveway, I noticed Tommy through the window, helping Sarah decorate Christmas cookies. The sight of him, happy and loved, brought tears to my eyes. We spent the rest of Christmas with Sarah and Jim, baking cookies, singing songs, and watching Tommy's eyes light up as he assisted Jim build the nativity scene. This, I understood, is how family should feel. My phone rang the next morning, while Tommy was still sleeping among the goodies Santa had brought him. It was Aunt Caroline. You might want to hear how things ended last night, she said without elaborating. After you left, it was like a dam broke. Uncle Mike stood up and said he couldn't stay in that house another minute. Then Aunt Marie and Uncle Steve followed. Pretty soon, everyone was gathering their coats and kids. I listened as she told how the relatives had all departed together, without even saying goodbye to my parents. As they walked out, some appeared to make loud comments about deceptive behavior and family shame. And Jack? I inquired quietly. Oh honey, he was livid. Packed up the kids right then and there. Told Rachel he needed time to think about their marriage. Said he was taking the children to his parents' house for Christmas. Rachel was crying. Your parents were trying to do damage control, but it was too late. I overheard her take a deep breath. I want you to know, Dakota, we're all on your side. What they did to you and Tommy, it's unforgivable. After I hung up, I sat on my bed, absorbing everything. My phone began to buzz with notifications. Text messages from Mom, Dad, and Rachel. They all said variations on the same thing. We're sorry, we were wrong, please talk to us, we can explain. I read every message once. Then I archived them without replying. The week between Christmas and New Year's was a calm haze. Tommy and I spent quiet evenings with Sarah and Jim, playing board games, watching Christmas movies, and relishing the simple pleasure of being with people who genuinely loved us. On New Year's Eve morning, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I noticed Mom and Dad standing on my porch, clutching a large, carefully wrapped box. My heart pounded against my ribs as I considered whether to open the door. Dakota, we know you're home. Mom said, her voice muffled by the door. Please, we just want to talk. After a brief hesitation, I opened the door but remained firmly in the entryway, preventing their access. They appeared smaller, less threatening than they did a week before. We brought this for Tommy, Dad explained, holding out the item. Through the wrapping paper, I noticed the logo of a high-end electronics retailer. He doesn't need it, I said, making no attempt to accept the present. Please, Dakota, Mom came forward. We know we were wrong, the way we treated Tommy, the manipulation with the money, we're truly sorry. And we want you to know, he said hurriedly, that this isn't about the money you were sending us. We really do feel terrible about everything. I examined their faces, looking for authenticity. Are you sorry because you realize what you did was wrong? Or are you sorry because the entire family knows what you did and won't speak to you anymore? They exchanged glances. In that quick glance, I had my answer. I think you should leave, I answered gently. I don't believe you. And I don't trust you. Not anymore. But we're family, Mom insisted, tears welling in her eyes. No. I shook my head. Families don't manipulate each other. Family doesn't exclude a child from Christmas. Family doesn't scheme and lie to get money. What you did? That's not family. They ultimately left, still carrying the undesired present and leaving their apologies behind as they walked to their car. I watched them drive away, not sorrowful, but relieved. In the months that followed, I stood by my decision. I did not answer their calls or texts. Rachel also tried to contact me, but I disabled her phone number. Instead, the money I had been paying to my parents was transferred to Tommy's education fund. The strange thing about removing toxic individuals from your life is how much space it creates for better relationships to develop. Aunt Caroline began inviting us over for Sunday dinners. Uncle Mike and his wife invited us over for barbecues, where Tommy could play with his cousins. Everyone made an effort to include him, asking him about his interests and encouraged him to ask questions. Tommy inquired one summer afternoon, Mom, why does Uncle Mike's pool have that funny smell? That's the chlorine, buddy, Uncle Mike said before I could respond, embarking into an explanation of water treatment and chemical processes that captivated Tommy. I witnessed my son blossom under the care and devotion of family members who genuinely wanted to know him, not change him. He began calling Sarah and Jim Grandma and Grandpa solely. And they continued to be our bedrock, our safe haven in whatever storm. Am I the asshole for punching my husband's ex-wife straight in the throat because she kept following me and hurling racist insults at my child? Original post, January 30th, 2025. My husband's ex-wife, who we will call Shelley, hates me and I'm not a big fan of hers either. She is high conflict and has been putting my stepson in the middle of her crap since the beginning. She had him listen at our door and report back what I said. She even called CPS on me for having a medical marijuana card. Nothing came of it. She will tell anyone that will listen that I stole her family from her and I destroyed her life. My husband had been divorced from her for 8 years when I met him. I just think that backstory is important. A couple of days ago I took our daughter, 4F, to the park in our subdivision to play. As I was pushing her on the swings I saw Shelley pull up. I immediately grabbed my daughter and started walking back home. Shelley began to follow me and started yelling insults and threats at me. I dialed 911 and told them what was going on so we stayed on the line. She called my daughter a half-breed, I'm black, my husband is white, and continued to follow me down the street hurling insults. I told her to leave me alone and I've called the police. That just made her more aggressive. By that point I was in front of my house and my garage door was up so I told my daughter to go in the house and get her dad. I turn around and Shelly is running full speed towards me with her arm drawn back. I punched her dead in the throat. She fell on the ground and was gasping for air. I dropped to the ground to ask if she was okay, but she continued to try to swing at me as she gasped for air. The cops then arrived and put her in handcuffs because she started to fight them. They put us in separate areas and talked to us. She told them that I hit her first, but my husband was already outside, with the footage, ready to show the police. They asked me if I wanted to press charges and I said yes. This is where people are saying I'm wrong. We live in a small town and people got wind of what happened and almost everyone is saying I'm wrong because Shelly is 5 feet 4 and maybe 130 pounds and I am 5 feet 10 and weigh about 180 pounds and I weightlift. People are saying I should have gone easier on her and I could have really hurt her. They have also said I've done enough and charges weren't necessary. Of course my husband, my stepson, and my family are on my side, but I've gotten some nasty messages from people in my town calling me a monster and a bully. I feel like I was just defending myself, but I want some unbiased opinions because now I feel like I might have taken it too far and I'm starting to doubt myself. AITA? Relevant? Top comments? Commenter 1, NTA. You were defending yourself against a physical threat, and your actions were reasonable given the circumstances. Shelly's behavior was unacceptable, and she escalated the situation by following you, yelling insults, and making threats. When she charged at you with her arm drawn back, you had every right to protect yourself. 1. The criticism from people in your town seems misguided, focusing on your physical size and strength rather than the facts of the situation. The fact that Shelly is smaller than you doesn't mean you should have allowed her to attack you without defending yourself. It's also important to note that Shelly's behavior has been problematic for a long time, including putting your stepson in the middle of her conflicts and making false reports to CPS. Her actions have shown a pattern of aggression and manipulation. You did the right thing by defending yourself and pressing charges. Don't let the opinions of others make you doubt your actions. You prioritized your safety and the safety of your child, and that's something to be proud of. Commenter 2. NTA. Shelly is an idiot to try to swing on someone bigger, taller and stronger than her. And why? Because you didn't react to her insults. Instead you asked her to leave you alone and then called the cops. Had you not turned around and see her running towards you, ready to hit you, she could have caused you great damage. Instead, you threw one punch to keep her away. Too bad your fist is at her throat level. She should have thought that one out before she tried to attack you. Do not doubt yourself. You defended yourself from someone who intended to do you harm. You didn't continue to walk on her. You were not the aggressor. She stepped on your property and threatened you, and your child. The people in your town are idiots. Fight rumors with truth. Post that footage. Show the charges. You were within your rights. Period. And I defy anyone to have been in the same position who wouldn't have gotten into a defensive mode like you did. Commenter 3. NTA. It's all recorded, from the time she approached you at the park and attacked you at your home. I wonder if it's possible to charge her with a hate crime. OP. They charged her with assault and I'm getting a restraining order. OP should tell her husband to get full custody of his son. OP. My SS is 18 and has lived with us since he was 8. Commenter 4. Nope. NTA. She came at you while you were trying to keep your child safe. And 8 years? She needs to move on. OP. I don't think she'll ever move on. My husband is a great guy and she really did mess up. He truly loved her but she was too toxic to accept it. Now I think she has a lot of regrets. Her aggression definitely got worse after I had my daughter because she wanted a girl. Update, January 31st, 2025. It hasn't even been 24 hours since my last post, but I feel y'all deserve an update and for me to clarify some things. Firstly, my daughter and I are okay and thank you all so much for your support. My daughter heard what was said but fortunately has no idea what it means. She also did not see any of the physical violence that occurred. Secondly, Shelly is still in jail. Luckily for us her family doesn't even like her so no one has bailed her out. She also had a warrant so she will probably be sitting there for a while. Next, for everyone worried about my stepson, he's just my son in our house. Thank you so much for the concern but he is 18 years old and I have been his mother figure for the past 10 years. He knows his mom's antics and he is in therapy and he's okay. For the people that privately messaged me to say I alienated my stepson from his mom, shame on you. Y'all have no idea what this kid has dealt with through the years and he's so strong. I also would like to clarify that I did press charges. I spoke to my lawyer, my aunt, and she said I actually have plenty of evidence from over the years to sue Shelly for the emotional pain she has caused me and I will be pursuing that. I'm going to make it hurt so she knows that this behavior will not be tolerated. I also am in the process of getting a restraining order, which will not take long at all given all the evidence. Lastly, this whole situation has been so eye-opening about the lack of support I have living in this town. I've stayed because I thought it was best for my family, but after speaking with my husband and stepson, we all realized it's best for everyone if we move and start fresh. If anyone has suggestions of diverse places to move to with a good school system for our daughter, please comment down below. I want to thank you all so much again for your help. I've felt more support from strangers on the internet than I have from the community I've lived in for years. I will continue to keep you all updated with whatever I can as I continue this process. Relevant comments. What was the reason for OOP's husband's divorce from his ex? OOP. She hit him in front of their son and fractured his eye socket. Commenter 1. Make sure Shelly actually has enough assets income to make suing her worth it. You know the old saying, you can't get blood out of a turnip. She sounds massively emotionally unregulated since she had a warrant out already. Emotionally unregulated people often can't hold jobs and really don't have money. Oop. She is a master esthetician with her own spa. She has money, even though she says she doesn't. Commenter 2. If you're willing to move to Scotland, we take kick-ass moms just fine here. Other than that, I can't help. But you were absolutely right in what you did, and I agree it hurt, and teach the lesson she best not come back for more. Based on OOP's background, can she relocate to any city and find a job? OOP. I'm actually a private financial advisor, so I work from home mostly. My husband is an engineer and he can get work just about anywhere. Am I the asshole for not wanting my husband to go away for the weekend to his best friend's bachelor party when I'm 37 weeks pregnant? Original post, Reddit March 25, 2019. My husband's best friend got engaged, and my husband is at the wedding party. He is not the best man, but is doing most of the planning for the bachelor party. In his friend group, they usually have a golf weekend. Also, this is likely the last bachelor party in the group as the rest of the guys are already married. However, we have a 2-year-old and I'm currently pregnant with our second child and due on August 25th. When he started planning the bachelor party, I told him that planning something earlier in the summer would give him a higher chance of going for the full weekend. I originally framed it as not wanting to be stuck watching our toddler by myself for a full weekend in my 3rd trimester while he's out golfing, which was a mistake. I should have framed it as not wanting him to go away for a weekend so close to my due date. They finally picked a date for the bachelor weekend. It's August 8th, so I'll be almost 38 weeks pregnant and considered full term. Technically I'll be 38 weeks the day he plans to get back. So it's about 2 weeks before my actual due date. The bachelor party will be about 2 hours away, without traffic. On previous golf weekends, he has been terrible about keeping his phone charged and it can be hard to get in touch with him. Also, while he doesn't drink, he does smoke pot, and would most likely be smoking the whole weekend. He thinks that as long as he gets someone to watch our toddler while he's gone, it's fine to go for the full weekend, 2 to 3 nights. This makes me incredibly nervous. I am willing to compromise and agree to an overnight plus a day of golf. I would also want him to keep his phone on and charged at all times, and ask that he stay sober in case I go into labor. He seemed to think this was an unreasonable compromise when I initially brought it up. Since then, he is unwilling to discuss it until they have finalized the plans for the weekend. I'm of the mindset that there are very few times in our marriage where my needs, wants, desires take priority over his, but that this is one of them. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for not wanting him to go to a bachelor party for 2 to 3 nights so close to my due date? Update. I tried to talk to my husband about the bachelor party, and specifically asked how they arrived at that weekend. My husband said the only requirement was that every groomsman be able to attend, and that he threw out 2 dates. One in July, and the one 2 weeks before my due date. The July date didn't work for some of the groomsmen, so he picked the August date. Those were the only 2 weekends discussed, and he apparently picked both. His argument is that if I went into labor when he was at work and happened to be on a long call, it could take him over 2 hours to get home, so why is it not okay to plan a trip that would take him the same distance away? I tried to explain that there's a difference between work, where, if you can't get home, it's because someone is seriously injured or something is burning down, and a bachelor party. He doesn't see it that way and just wants to be there for his friend. In his head the due date is August 25th, and there is no chance that the baby could possibly come 2 weeks early. We didn't get a chance to discuss the duration of the weekend or the possibility of not smoking before the conversation dissolved. He got pissed when I brought up that he has a poor track record at keeping in touch during these things, although he was pretty angry throughout the whole conversation tbh. I tried to remain calm throughout the conversation, but I did cry and I was the one to walk away first. After work today, I'm getting my son and we're going to stay with my parents. Top comments. Comment 1. Nah. I get that it's a big ask, but his best friend is getting married and he's only going to be 2 hours away. I think that as long as he keeps his phone charged and he stays sober enough to drive, it's not unreasonable that he wants to attend this event he planned. But I also get why you're nervous. Can he tentatively plan to attend and check in with your doctor to see how likely it is you're going to go into labor closer to the actual date? Comment 2. Doctors can guess but are frequently wrong. Lots of women are told they'll have their baby any day now at 36 weeks and go overdue. Or told there's no way the baby is coming yet and goes into labor within a week. 2 hours away is unlikely to be a huge deal, but if he's drinking and has to sober up first, or if she has precipitous labor, he could miss the birth entirely. Second babies often come faster too. Personally, I wouldn't be willing to risk that. Comment 3, NTA. The comments here are just so frustrating. Yes, OP's husband will have to make the immense sacrifice of staying sober at a bachelor party. Woe is him, how could he possibly survive? I am assuming that both parties made the decision to have another kid. In making that decision, OP has sacrificed 9 months of alcohol, getting high at parties, eating what she wants, and any number of other things. I don't care if he organized and could have planned it on another day. I don't care if it's the last bachelor party of the group. OP, and the baby, come first. Not just when it's easy and convenient, but all the time. If my husband went to something like this after I'd asked him not to, and he missed the birth of our child, or showed up drunk or high while I was in labor, it would be the end of my marriage. I honestly can't believe how many people are saying OP is unreasonable. If you can't stay sober for one weekend for your family, you have a problem. Update, Reddit August 11, 2019, 5 months later. So, the bachelor party was this weekend. My husband and I ultimately decided to wait until the doctor's appointment the week before the party to make a decision. If she said baby is coming any day now, he was going to go for the day. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law volunteered to watch our son for the weekend. And it turns out that my parents are moving and wound up moving to an apartment that is 5 minutes from our house, so they would be around in case I happened to go into labor. The OB said she didn't think the baby would come this weekend, so we decided that my husband would go to the bachelor party for 2 nights, with the stipulation that he remain sober and be ready to leave at a moment's notice. My husband told his friends that he would be up on Friday. We were all set. And then on Wednesday all hell broke loose. Our son got a rash on his hands and feet, and it turns out that someone at daycare had come down with hand, foot, and mouth disease. He wasn't showing any other symptoms, so we weren't sure if he actually had it or if it was just a random rash. We decided to see how he was on Thursday. If he had a fever, I was going to get a hotel, because if I came down with it, then I could pass it to the baby, and my husband was going to have to stay home. Our son woke up fever-free on Thursday morning, so we were still all set. Then on Thursday night, my mom went to the ER with stomach pains. Turns out, she was going to need surgery. My husband was supposed to leave at 6 a.m. on Friday, but I asked him to wait until we got an update on my mom. When I called her on Friday morning, apparently she was feeling better, so the doctor told her that she might be able to go home and schedule the surgery for a later date. I gave my husband the go-ahead to leave for the bachelor party. Except then the doctor changed his mind, and decided the surgery couldn't wait. My mom spent the weekend in the hospital waiting for a surgeon to be available. She finally was able to have the surgery on Sunday morning. In the meantime, I lined up a few friends just in case I happened to go into labor. My dad was also around, but had his hands full dealing with my mom and the move. So this weekend was stressful and it felt like everything that could go wrong did. But at least the baby stayed put. My husband got to go to 2 of the 3 nights of the bachelor party, my mom's surgery went well, and our son never actually got sick. And my husband was a lot more responsive to texts than he normally is because of the whole situation with my mom. I'm just glad that my husband is home and that this weekend is finally over. TLDR. My husband was able to go to most of the bachelor party and I didn't go into labor. But it was a very stressful weekend due to other factors. Top comments. Comment 1. I nearly got a panic attack reading this. It was extremely irresponsible of your husband to leave once potential HFM, and your mother's surgery, was in the picture. He shouldn't even ask you, because that puts pressure on you to not be the bitch. This could easily have gone a lot worse, and you just lucked out. I was a preemie from my mother stressing out. I've had really bad HFM as an adult, and when I gave birth myself, it went from low risk to life-threatening pretty fast, and 2 hours would definitely have made a big difference. He's a father, and that means he's got to be there for you, his son, and new baby-to-be. A multi-day bachelor party can't be a priority. It doesn't matter if you have family and friends, it's his child. I feel like you only got NAH because Reddit skews young enough and male enough that they don't quite internalize all the emotional labor that men pass to women, and how optional men find putting in the time to be a father. Would they think it's reasonable if, at 1 week postpartum, you decided to leave the baby behind and party it up with your friends? After all, there's breast pumps and formula, so other people can theoretically do newborn parenting. He owes you like all the 4 a.m. feedings at this point to make this up. Comment 2. Can you imagine if she had gone into birth? OP. It's just me today? Doc. You have someone you can call? Your mom? OP. She's in emergency surgery. Doc. Your dad? OP. He's taking care of her. Doc. Any friends? OP. Well, they're caring for my son who has HFM disease. Doc. Where's your husband again? OP. See, he really wanted 2 nights with his boys. Glad it worked out, but I hope this man grows up. Comment 3. This could be turned into a movie, so much drama with a good ending. Congrats, glad everything turned out okay. Mom okay. Son okay. You and baby okay. Hubby had a nice 2 days. Now sis is going to hit the fan when the baby comes. You're going to be busier than a one-armed paper hanger. Ope made a final edit to the update edit. Wow, I really wasn't expecting this to blow up like this. My husband and I were looking at the weekend with a sense of humor. As in, what else could go wrong? He's a great husband and father, and very helpful around the house. I understand that he wanted a last hurrah with the boys before the baby comes, and I thought that we did pretty well coming up with a compromise that was as stress-free as possible for everyone involved. Unfortunately, the best laid plans and all that crap. We're both just glad that he was able to have a great time with his friends, no one got HFM, my mom is okay, and he didn't miss the baby being born. I discovered that my fiancé had shared a room with his coworker, checked his phone, and was shocked to find out they had been cheating for months. Original post July 12, 2019. We've been engaged for 6 months. Together since 16. We knew and both realized that we were going to change as a person while growing up, and so communication has always been our #1 priority. We have a great relationship and our wedding is in October. I was seriously excited until now because I feel really uneasy. He went on a 2-day, 1-night work trip with his coworker, I'll call her F. I have met F once before at a company event and I didn't exactly like her. I'll be honest and say that she intimidated me and I feel insecure when I think about them spending time together. She's extremely bubbly and very attractive, also very flirty, but she's married. I didn't like that they were going on this work trip together, but what can I do? It would have been ridiculous if I told him he can't go because I don't like F. Anyways, I decided to pick him up at the airport. He was going to take a taxi, but I wanted to surprise him. They came out and F didn't look too pleased to see me. She kept talking about how much fun they had together, and at one point told me how lucky I was that my fiancé gives good massages. I was shocked and asked her how so, and it turns out he gave her a massage after the first day. I don't think this is okay and I wanted to confront him about it. Unfortunately, it doesn't stop here. Fiancé went straight to bed when we got home, so I didn't get the chance to really talk to him. I went through his bag, and I found the papers for the hotel they were staying at. 1 room is booked for 2 persons. 1 queen-size bed and a couch that can be turned into a bed. I don't even know how to feel. I don't know if this is okay or not. At the very least, I wish he would have told me. On the other hand, I didn't ask about his hotel room either. I just feel super uncomfortable. I'm trying to resist the urge to snoop on his phone and I feel terrible about it. I don't know what to do and I'm just feeling lost. Please help me out here. Top comments. Comment 1. If she made a comment about him giving her a massage right to your face, then she's trying to start shit between you and your so. Comment 2, and it worked. Comment 3, well, this is not surprising since it's fucking inappropriate behavior for parties and relationships to be doing. Comment 4. Just ask Marcellus Wallace. Comment 5. Would you give a man a foot massage? Update July 18, 2019, 6 days later. Sorry for the late update. Didn't really have the time to write something. I decided to snoop, and I hit the jackpot right away. I unlocked it with his fingerprint. Should have been the first sign. He claimed it was convenient. I scrolled through their messages and it was obvious. They were even making fun of me together. They've been sleeping together for months. Don't know what got over me, but I wanted to read everything they ever said to each other and I did. Pretty sure they slept together just 2 days after he proposed. From what I could gather from their talk, she wants him to leave me, but he's hesitant. But sleeping with her for months is okay, right? Not proud of my reaction, but I went a little crazy. Been with this dude since I was 16. I packed and threw some of his stuff and called a friend over, and woke him up and told him he should leave. He confessed and begged for a second chance. I couldn't believe it, really. He left and only came back to grab more of his stuff. I blocked him everywhere and haven't spoken to him since, but obviously I'm going to need to be in contact with him to figure out the details about our finances. I don't know, I'm still hurt and upset, but not as much as I thought. Initially I felt like I was going crazy. And I feel so stupid for not noticing or finding out earlier. I wasted so much time with him. Somehow, because it's a full-blown affair, it hurts less. Oh, and there was no work trip. I mainly feel like an idiot for not asking more questions and blindly trusting him. My friend has been with me and she is always able to make me laugh. We went out together most nights and I've been feeling better. To top it off, I slept with one of his best buddies last night, and he told me not to tell him LOL. I was drunk and wanted revenge, and well, I guess I sorta got it, though I'll definitely be letting him now. Not much else to say. I guess I'm going to be single for a while and enjoy that. I seriously can't believe I was going to get married to this asshole. Turns out you never really know people. Top comments. Comment 1. Again, for everyone who might in the future have their spouse SO tell them that they shared a hotel with an opposite-sex coworker on a business trip. No company would promote or insist on this kind of arrangement. Comment 2. The legal hassle is just too much risk. As I said in the original post, either there was no business trip or they were in charge of booking their own rooms and the company didn't know. I've worked for a few companies and sometimes I just had an expense account, so I got to book rooms for myself. So did my coworkers. But a company will never put two, especially opposite-sex coworkers, in one room. My parents forced me to lose weight for my sister's wedding, but after my transformation, they couldn't handle my success. Growing up, I was always an overweight child. I've always been bigger than the majority of the other kindergarten students. While my peers were still figuring out what made them distinctive, my size had already stood out. As I grew older, the weight I carried became more visible. By high school, I was indisputably overweight, and my shape and girth served as a continuous reminder of my differences. College was not much different. While some of my peers began to find who they were or explore new aspects of themselves, I stayed stuck in the same identity, overweight and occasionally fighting with it. It wasn't easy being the bigger kid. It exposed me to continual ridicule, mockery, and nasty comments from people who didn't know or cared to understand me. Growing up, I was bullied more than I care to recall. Classmates teased me mercilessly. Their insults ate away at me, creating profound doubts and self-doubt that felt impossible to overcome. They'd call me names, tell cruel jokes, and I'd frequently be the punchline. I was always singled out, as if I were somehow unworthy of affection or companionship. I was continually excluded from games, parties, and gatherings. It felt like I was always on the outside, watching everyone else go through the regular ups and downs of childhood and adolescence from a distance I couldn't reach. These years of bullying influenced how I perceived myself and responded to the world. I felt out of place with others, so I sought sanctuary in books. I lost myself in literature and stories that helped me escape my daily troubles. Books did not judge me. They did not ridicule me. I became known as the nerd, and I didn't like it all that much. Bonnie, my younger sister, was very different from me. She was only a year younger than me and possessed an effortless charisma that drew others to her. Bonnie thrived in social situations, whereas I was shy and reserved. She had a fascinating personality. She could go into a room and instantly have everyone smiling, laughing, and absolutely fascinated by her. Bonnie didn't just make friends easily, she seemed to have an intrinsic ability to persuade people to support her, almost as if she were the sun around which everyone gravitated. Regardless of our differences, I adored her. I took my job as her older sister seriously, feeling fiercely protective whenever she needed it. When she began attending the same high school as mine, I was overjoyed. Initially, being Bonnie's older sister made me feel proud, as if I had a particular place in her life. However, as she grew older, things began to alter. As Bonnie settled into high school and began to create her own personality, I saw a difference in how she perceived me. She began to see how different we were, and how differently we were treated. Whereas I was the bookish, quiet kind, she was vivacious and popular, someone who rapidly established herself among the cool circle. I observed as she became aware of my eccentricities and insecurities, which had previously made me appear uncool. Bonnie began to distance herself from me as she found new pals. She would then try to actively ignore or avoid me in school. That hurt. It genuinely pained me that my own sibling saw me as inferior. Nonetheless, I did my best to accept her decision and give her the distance she appeared to require, even though it hurt to think I was losing not only my sister but also a friend. But, gradually, Bonnie stopped ignoring me and began to associate with others who made me feel like an outcast. Bonnie and her pals would take advantage of any opportunity to humiliate me whenever we met in the corridors or at lunch. They'd taunt me in front of other students or, worse, try to trip me as I passed with my lunch tray, just to make everyone laugh. It felt like I was losing her, not to new people, but to the same taunting and abusive conduct I'd been subjected to for so long. I was always on guard, attempting to avoid not just my peers' criticism but also the humiliation inflicted by my own sister. It hurt a lot, especially because it came from someone I had always admired and looked up to. When Bonnie invited her friends over, they would all gang up on me at home. They would rush into my room without knocking, then laugh and gesture to my body. They'd fling insults like geek and fatty at me like they were nothing. I felt like a zoo animal, as if I were their source of entertainment. When they entered my personal space in my room, I felt small and alone, as if I were an alien in my own home. I tried to explain it to my parents several times, hoping they would realize how tough it was for me to deal with Bonnie's conduct. But every time I brought it up, they dismissed my worries. They'd smile and defend her acts, claiming that this is how siblings bond, that Bonnie was only playing around with me. They told me it was harmless, even suggesting that I loosen up and stop taking everyone's taunts so seriously. They told me that I was older and should be more patient and resilient. So, not only did I face years of bullying from my peers, including my own sister, but my concerns were repeatedly rejected by my parents. It made me feel isolated, as if no one in my own family realized or understood how deeply it hurt. The only time I ever felt properly noticed by our parents was when I received my grades. Academics had always come effortlessly to me, and I became accustomed to receiving high grades. In a way, it was the one area where I felt superior to everyone else. It was also the one way I could make my parents proud, the one part of my life that they appeared to actually care about. My parents enjoyed bragging about my accomplishments to friends and relatives, portraying me as the family scholar, as if my grades were evidence of their parenting prowess. But Bonnie detested the analogies. She was not an academic overachiever, nor did she want to be, but our parents' repeated reminders of my accomplishments made her resentful. They put my grades up as an example, meaning that she needed to do the same. I could always tell she was frustrated and angry, which is probably why she did what she did to me. Bonnie would occasionally attempt to destroy my hard work in order to get back at me. She would sneak into my room in the middle of the night and grab my homework, often just before a major task was due. I'd wake up the next morning to find my perfectly completed work stolen. Panic would set in, and I'd feverishly hunt through my books, papers and files, becoming increasingly anxious with each passing minute. And there she'd be, smirking, watching me from the doorway, relishing every moment of my anxiety. To her, it was a minor victory, a way to bring me down a peg and remind me that I wasn't invincible. She understood how important my grades were to me, how much of my self-worth I had invested in them, and she enjoyed disturbing that aspect of my life. I only found out about her stealing my assignments years later, when she drunkenly admitted one evening. My relationship with Bonnie has softened over time, but we are still far from close. You could say we've matured a little, and some of the animosity from our youth has dissipated. However, the strong closeness that siblings often enjoy did not fully emerge between us. After graduation, I moved out and started a new life in a new city, with an interesting job and new chances, which meant I didn't see my family as much. As time passed, our communications became limited to occasional phone calls or texts. So, last year, when I scheduled a summer visit home, I was truly excited to see everyone. It had been a long time since we'd all gotten together as a family, and I was excited to catch up and reconnect. However, not everything went as planned. Our family lunch began well enough. Everyone appeared delighted to see me, and for a moment, it felt like old times. That changed, however, when Bonnie unexpectedly revealed her engagement. None of us saw it coming, and we initially assumed she was joking. However, it was instantly apparent that she was serious. She proudly put out her hand, displaying a gorgeous ring, and I couldn't help but remark how exquisite it was. I was genuinely happy for her, delighted that she had finally met someone she loved and who loved her back. Almost as soon as the congratulations subsided, Bonnie turned to me and inquired about my recent activities. I told her about my profession, my life, and how rewarding things had been for me. Before I could finish, she cut me off. "I can't help but say this," she started, smirking. "But why are you still fat? If your life is truly amazing, shouldn't you have shed weight by now?" Her remarks hit me like a slap, reawakening old insecurities that I thought I had overcome. The room became uncomfortably silent, and I could feel everyone's gaze on me, waiting to see how I would respond. I merely shrugged and tried to laugh awkwardly at her comment. But my parents immediately joined in to criticize me. They began discussing how I was still obese and unmarried, and how they were concerned I would never have children. I felt so mortified hearing them talk like that. My accomplishments, the work I was proud of, the life I had made for myself in another city, didn't seem to matter in their eyes. They were just concerned with my weight and the fact that I did not have my own family. As my parents and sister continued to talk about me, their comments wound deeper than I imagined. I had spent years eventually discovering myself, gaining confidence and freedom. But in those moments, I felt like the same nervous, awkward teenager I had always been, anxious for my family's acceptance and approval. My parents then applauded Bonnie for getting engaged before me and expressed their pride in her. To them, I was the inferior child, successful, but not quite enough. What was supposed to be a happy family reunion had swiftly turned into a heartbreaking reminder of old scars. At that point, I felt more like an outsider than ever. Bonnie did not stop. She continued to ask probing questions. So, when are you getting married? I mean, do you even have a boyfriend? She was blatantly mocking me in front of everyone by bringing up my romantic life. My parents soon jumped on the subject, agreeing with Bonnie that it was past time for me to find someone before it was too late. They pointed out how Bonnie, being younger, was settling down before me, whilst I, the older one, was wasting my life away at work. I attempted to argue that I liked my life the way it was, that my work and freedom provided me with fulfillment. My career paid well, and I was passionate about it, so why did I need to meet a spouse or have a child to be happy? I am content just the way I am, I informed them. But my words didn't appear to register. My mother, especially, appeared contemptuous. She gave me a sharp look and taunted me. What's the point of earning all that money if you don't have anyone to come home to? It was as if she couldn't believe that happiness existed outside of marriage or family. Sitting there, I had the typical feeling of being misunderstood. That my life choices were disregarded. This was my family, and they were supposed to know me best. However, they appeared to be preoccupied with a different definition of happiness than mine. I had come home seeking connection and warmth, but instead got judgment and taunts. Bonnie then smirked and added, I expect you to at least have a +1 by the time my wedding rolls around. She chuckled and kept going. I don't want people thinking my sister is some old miserable woman all alone while I'm getting married. The comment stung. I simply shook my head and assured her I'd try. That's when my folks spoke out again, matter-of-factly. Bonnie's wedding is almost a year away. Even if you can't find a partner, you could at least try to lose weight and look more presentable for her wedding. They suggested that if I reduced weight, it would be simpler for me to attract a partner. Bonnie enthusiastically agreed with them. Yeah, I want you to lose a few pounds at least, she remarked nonchalantly, as if she was doing me a favor. I sat there, astonished and humiliated, with an aching that I hadn't felt in years. How could my relatives talk to me like this? Did I truly deserve their hateful words simply because I was overweight? Was I not meant to have feelings because I was fat? I was a normal person, just like them. I functioned like everyone else. I never considered my weight as an impediment, so why did they? I'd even dated men who liked me just the way I was, but my parents and Bonnie made it sound like my weight was preventing me from finding love or men approaching me, which wasn't even true. I wanted to defend myself and tell them how terrible their statements were, but I felt frozen, unable to find the correct words. Their statements took me back to high school, to the agonizing times when my weight made me a target. I despised how nonchalantly my family brought up my deepest concerns without considering how they made me feel. So I sat there, holding in my pain, and let the topic go to anything else. When I returned home from my trip to see my family, I pushed myself into reducing weight with a zeal I had not realized I possessed. It began as a way to prove something to my family, but it gradually grew very personal. I joined a gym, followed a rigorous diet, and even hired a personal trainer. My trainer has been a lifesaver. After going through her own change from overweight to healthy weight, she knew just how to assist me through a path tailored particularly for me. She created a routine specific to my goals and encouraged me every step of the way, reminding me to give myself grace when I stumbled. This time, everything seemed to click. I started losing weight steadily, and as the pounds came off, I felt lighter. Not just physically, but also mentally. For the first time in my life, I began to feel and appear different. My confidence increased quickly. I used to assume that decreasing weight wouldn't have much of an influence, but it has. People see me differently today. Strangers are nicer and more attentive. Friends and colleagues see me with fresh respect. I can't deny that this seems like a validation I've never gotten before. It's as if I've suddenly become more noticeable than I was before. My new body brought a new sense of style. I overhauled my entire wardrobe, filling it with items I had only fantasized about wearing. I even opted for a full hair makeover, attempting a daring and trendy style that I would have been too afraid to try in the past. Perhaps it seems expensive, but I've never felt so good. I look in the mirror now and don't recognize the person staring back. It's like meeting a version of myself that I never knew existed. I'm proud of how far I've come, not just because I lost weight, but also because I gained confidence and self-assurance. With Bonnie's wedding just 2 weeks away, my family has invited me to fly down and join them for lunch next week to finalize the plans for her special day. But I don't feel like returning home. I don't want my family to ridicule me again or make me feel tiny, especially now that I'm finally feeling good about myself for the first time in a long time. I don't want to go to Bonnie's wedding anymore because of how she and my parents have treated me, but I know if I don't go, they'll be furious and give me a long lecture about how family is family and how, no matter how heartbroken I am, I must be present for Bonnie's big day. So, AITA, what happens if I do not attend my sister's wedding? Update 1. Wow, I'm overwhelmed by everyone's response. Some of your proposals are truly humorous. I can't believe you're encouraging me to show up and mess with my sister now that I've lost so much weight. Growing up as a fat kid had a negative impact on my self-esteem, particularly in terms of how I perceived myself. I struggled with self-doubt for a long time, always believing that I wasn't good enough or didn't measure up to others. But reading all of your responses has been a game changer. It's as if you've helped me see myself in a completely new light, and I'm finally starting to feel more confident than I ever have. In fact, I'm seriously considering turning up to my family's lunch and shocking them. They haven't seen me in a long time, and since I don't use social media, they have no idea how much weight I've dropped. It will be interesting to witness their reactions. Update 2. Okay, Reddit, you're not prepared for this upgrade. Grab some popcorn because things are about to get exciting. I decided to fly down to join my family for lunch. As I previously stated, I believed that when they saw me, they would be proud of the transformation I had undergone. After all, they were the ones who pushed me into it in the first place. Surely, they'd be overjoyed to see the positive improvements in me and finally recognize the effort I'd put in. When I walked into my parents' house, their jaws absolutely dropped. They looked at me, stunned. As if they couldn't believe I was the same person. After a time, they stammered, wondering if it was actually me. I gave them a big hug, thrilled with their reaction. They continually complimented my appearance, saying how beautiful I looked and how they couldn't believe it was me. However, when Bonnie came, the situation changed. She didn't notice me at first, disregarding me as if I were invisible, as she had done so many times before. But when I rose up to greet her, she did a double take, her eyes widening with surprise. She gave an odd, almost forced laugh before reaching over and pushing her fingers on my stomach, wide-eyed, as if she wanted proof that I had truly dropped all of that weight. My parents laughed at her reaction and explained that they too couldn't believe it at first. As we settled in for lunch, the subject turned to my makeover. Bonnie and my parents bombarded me with questions about how I had done it, marveling at how different I appeared. Their voices were full of surprise, as if they had never imagined I could look any other way. Bonnie, in particular, kept saying that she had never anticipated me to alter so dramatically after dropping weight. Then she dropped this gem. When I first asked you to lose weight, I never expected you to look this pretty. I didn't even know you had that jawline. And those ankles beneath all that fat. I hesitated, attempting to maintain my cool, and smiled at her before reminding her. Bonnie, I've always been pretty. Losing weight just enhanced my features. Bonnie, on the other hand, contended that there was something more about me that was distinct. Then she had the courage to ask, did you have some surgeries done on yourself? Because there's no way you look this good by yourself. I could feel my blood starting to boil. The hubris to believe that I required surgery to look attractive when, in fact, I had worked so hard to get my current appearance. I looked her directly in the eyes and replied, wow, Bonnie, it's amazing that you think that little of me. No surgery, just a lot of hard work and self-love. Something you might want to try sometime. Bonnie's expression changed from surprise to displeasure, but I didn't care. It felt amazing to finally say something and put her in her place. Before she could react, my parents jumped in, attempting to smooth things over in their own way. You shouldn't be offended, my mother replied. The three of us have just never seen you look this way before. Honestly, you look even more beautiful now than Bonnie does. And she's the one getting married. Bonnie appeared much angrier following Mom's remark. I simply ignored her and concentrated on my food, allowing my sister to seethe in her rage. Then my mother joined in. You know, I was thinking. Maybe you should go back to your original hair color. I think you'd look even better with your natural shade. This blonde look makes you stand out too much. Maybe you should just go back to your old look. Bonnie and my father quickly agreed with her. My dad concurred with my mom and said, Bonnie has always been the blonde daughter of the family, and you were the brunette. So, it would be a good idea for you to go back to your original hair color. It might make you look more like yourself. Hearing their statements, I was taken aback. I suddenly felt like the three of them were ganging up on me, attempting to bring me down. My hairstylist had suggested that I change my hair color to blonde because it better matched my skin tone and complexion. It had nothing to do with attempting to outperform or overshadow my sister. I could see why Bonnie was jealous of me. I looked nice now, but I couldn't figure out why my folks were so unhappy with me. It was as if they wanted to transform me back into who I was, despite the fact that they had wanted me to be more acceptable for their darling daughter's forthcoming wedding in the first place. But now that I did, they couldn't accept who I had become. Instead of recognizing my progress, they sought to undermine me. I finally questioned my parents. What's your problem? Why can't I be blonde too? Does my sister own that color or something? I paused, annoyed. No, she doesn't. I can be blonde or brunette. It's my choice. Why does it even matter to you so much? I couldn't understand why they were so obsessed on my returning to my former self, as if my appearance had to match who I was. Before, my mother scoffed at me and claimed that I was purposefully attempting to undermine Bonnie's wedding by making an effort to stand out with my appearance. Bonnie joined in, stating, with your weight loss, you're already going to stand out, so do you really need to take my hair color too? My father, as usual, agreed with them, telling me that I was being difficult for no reason and that, as Bonnie's sister, I should be more tolerant. I couldn't believe what I heard. It was not about stealing anything, it was about having the ability to do whatever made me happy. But instead of supporting it, they were all concerned about how it would make Bonnie uncomfortable. You know what? I'm done with this, I murmured, the words almost burning as they from my lips. The three of you are so caught up in your own negativity that you can't even accept that I've changed. The truth is, I've always been amazing just the way I am, but none of you ever saw it. Now, even after I've lost weight, it's still not good enough for you. No matter what I do, it's never enough. I took time to process what I had just said. They only gazed at me, and it didn't matter. I was done with holding back. Since you all have so much to say about me, I think it's time I gave you some unsolicited advice, just like you love to give me. I turned to my mother first, feeling the words surge inside me like a deluge. Mom, I really hate how loose the skin is around your eyes and your lips. They droop on one side when you laugh. I can't help but notice all your crooked teeth, and honestly, it's just disgusting to me. I just gave her a second to react before turning to my father. Dad, I said with a stern voice, you're bald. You really have no right to say anything about anyone's hair or their hair color. How are you going to criticize someone's looks when you can't even keep a full head of hair? I noticed his face stiffening, but I wasn't finished yet. Finally, I resorted to Bonnie. And you, don't ever talk down to me again. Between the two of us, I've always been the better-looking sibling. But now, with all the weight I've lost, you look even fatter than me. Just look at those chubby arms of yours. Bonnie's face flushed with shame and she appeared to be about to burst into tears. I then hoisted my glass, downed my drink in one go, and walked out with a smirk, leaving everyone stunned and astonished. I had spoken everything I needed to say. I couldn't believe those words had come out of my mouth, but I didn't regret them one bit. They deserved to be humiliated after years of being criticized. After lunch, I flew directly back home. I did not want to stay behind and attend Bonnie's wedding. Since then, my phone has been overloaded with voicemails and texts from my parents and Bonnie. They've been calling me disrespectful and foul-mouthed for how I spoke to them and for simply leaving. Mom even insists that I fly back down to attend Bonnie's wedding because it won't look good to her in-laws if I don't. Update 3. So I ended up skipping Bonnie's wedding. Thanks to all of your suggestions, instead of returning home to attend, I decided to treat myself to an impromptu staycation at a 5-star resort. Honestly, it was one of the best moves I'd made in a long time. I spent the weekend doing whatever made me happy. No drama or pressure, just pure enjoyment. I treated myself to a spa day, binge-watched my favorite shows, and even visited some new places in the city I'd been longing to see. I've also blocked my relatives, so they can't contact me again. I'm weary of being bullied by them and want to avoid all of the poison and drama. Right now, my primary focus is on self-care. My mother abandoned me, took all my savings, then suddenly called asking me to pay $2,000 for her husband's stepdaughter's dorm room. My phone suddenly buzzed when I was in bed, minding my own business. It was my mother. I hadn't heard from her in months. So what did she have to say? She didn't say, "Hey, "How are you doing?" Instead, she got right to the point. She needed $2,000 for my stepsister's dorm fees. Yes, you read it correctly. She didn't even check in, just made an abrupt demand for money. Backstory: why this is a big deal. Before you pass judgment, please allow me to explain why this is such a significant event. This isn't a typical family request. When I was 16, my mother married Mark, her new husband, and it was brutally obvious that he had no interest in me. Mark had 2 children of his own. Noah, 14, Lily, now 17. They were treated like gold from the time they entered the picture. Almost immediately, my mother began acting as if I did not exist. I understand that mixing families can be difficult, but she didn't even attempt to make it work. The stolen college fund. When I graduated from high school, my grandparents graciously gave me $22,000 to help with my future. It was the first time I had truly felt free. On top of that, I had saved another $2,000 from my part-time work, giving me a $24,000 cushion for college or whatever came next. Then, one day, I looked into my bank account. Every single cent was gone. I confronted my mother, convinced that it must have been an error. She was still a co-owner of my account because I hadn't transferred it over yet. She looked me straight in the eyes, without a sign of guilt, and said she had taken everything. Her reason? It was my punishment for not respecting her new husband and their children. Or, at the very least, some ambiguous crap she cooked up on the moment. I lost it. She had treated my future as if it were nothing. That money was for college, my life, and she just took it. So I did the only sensible thing. I packed my bags and moved in with my grandparents, the only people who seemed to be concerned about what I was going through. What happens after that? I seldom spoke with my mother. Years later, she crawls back, move forward a few years. I just graduated college and am still trying to figure out my life. My mother called unexpectedly. Why? To ask for $2,000 to help Lily pay for her private dorm room. It appears that living with a roommate would be too difficult for her. Seriously. What 17-year-old wants a private dorm room? What happened to just coping with your roommate like everyone else? I did not even hesitate. No way. Not happening. The guilt trip begins. And how did she respond? No is not something you can say. We are family. Are you really going to refuse to help? She seldom asked how I was doing. We hadn't spoken in months, yet she treated me like I was some kind of ATM, just useful for money. I went straight to the monetary request, as if I owed her something. I simply hung up. I wasn't going to suffer through another guilt trip. The entitlement is unreal, to be honest. The entitlement shocks, but does not surprise me. This is not the first time she has done anything like this. I could have easily gone unnoticed after Mark entered the picture. She went above and beyond for him and his children, whilst I was there. Growing up, she wasn't always this way. But the moment she married him, it was as if I did not exist. She stopped asking how I was doing, stopped attending my school events, and stopped loving. She neglected to invite me over for Christmas after I had already moved in with my grandparents. However, guess what? She faxed the card. I hope you are doing well, Mom. Love is what it is. Nothing like we miss you or sorry for everything, just a simple card. Her interests were looks rather than true motherhood. Now she has the audacity to call out of nowhere and ask me to finance the dorm fees for her stepdaughter. After everything she's put me through? Not sure, not likely. To be honest, it's quite depressing. I owe them nothing after she stole my savings, left me to fend for myself, and prioritized her new family. I once wanted to be in a relationship with her. I tried to contact you back then, hoping we might work things out. Still, every time, it felt like I was talking to a brick wall. Her new family occupied her so much that she had no time for me. Despite our years of silence, she suddenly expects me to hand up $2,000 as if we're close. It's annoying, but I suppose I shouldn't be shocked. Some folks don't change. They simply take and take, claiming ownership over whatever you have. But I have learned my lesson. I'm no longer that defenseless child, letting her walk all over me. I've moved on, started my own life, and I'm not going to let her guilt trip me into paying for anything. Following that call, I blocked her from everything, and, to be honest, it feels as if a huge weight has been lifted. I cannot live with such negativity in my life. She will find out quickly if she tries to contact me again. I am done being courteous. After hanging up with my mother, I understood that was it. I had made myself very plain. Error. A few days later, I was just lying around, trying to enjoy my weekend, When my phone called, it was her once again. I almost disregarded it. What positive outcome may this have? But something piqued my interest, perhaps the faint hope that she had returned, ready for a normal chat. She hadn't. With a note of smugness, she remarked, "Listen, I talked to Mark, and we came up with a new arrangement." I could almost see her patting herself on the back, as if she were about to provide me with excellent service. She went on. "Lily definitely needs a private dorm room since sharing with others would make her uncomfortable. She apparently can only deal with shared toilets and roommates. Their great scheme? Lily would receive a lovely 2-bedroom apartment with her own bathroom. And who would they like to help fund the cost? Exactly, me. What is the total for the semester? $3,800. They said I should donate $1,000 per month. For a stepsister who hardly remembers me? They asked me to pay $1,000 a month for a room I would never visit. It was so ridiculous, I almost laughed. I asked her directly, "Why is this my problem?" She immediately went into full guilt trip mode. "You never gave anything to this family. It's time you give back. You have to correct your errors." Whose mistakes? I have not even handled them in this manner. Then Mom yelled at me for living off my grandparents, as if I were a freeloader. First and foremost, my grandparents invited me to remain with them after everything I'd been through with her. They wanted to help me get back on my feet. Meanwhile, she has done far more for her real family than she has for me. In her perspective, I owe her for every little thing she has done for me. She kept underlining how much I owed them for not being a part of the family anymore, as if her driving me out was entirely my fault. She made me feel like I didn't belong, and now she's making me feel awful about leaving that mess behind. Yes. But no thanks. My rage was seething at this moment. But rather than allowing her to drag me down into this pit of guilt and manipulation, I asked her one thing. When are you planning to pay me back the $44,000 you took from me in high school? She flipped out the second I said it. She began screaming, calling me unappreciative and self-serving. I did everything for you? And this is how you pay me back? Looking at the past and throwing it away? You never even recognized what I did for you, I replied plainly. You never even apologized for stealing that money. You are the one who owes anything here. But she wasn't listening. She kept yelling about how I had abandoned the family and how my inaction was jeopardizing Lily's future. Apparently, enrolling her at a public college with normal dorms would ruin her entire life. Sure. She will be completely fine. The truth is that she wasn't asking for aid. She demanded it. There was no please or could you help us out? It was simply an expectation that I would comply, as if it were my obligation to clean up after their actions. And let's not even get started on Lily acting as if she's too good for the standard college experience. I made it through college while sharing a tiny room with a stranger. I'd had enough. I'm not giving you a single penny, you can figure it out without me. Then I hung up. Once again, it felt like déjà vu. Not because of the money, but because of the overwhelming entitlement. A complete disregard for me, my life, and the limits I had established. My hands were shaking. I knew it was not over. Even as I hung up, I could see she wasn't going to let this go. My mother has always been the sort to persist until she gets her way. Later that evening, she confirmed me correct. She sent me a long guilt-ridden text, practically an essay, about how I was tearing the family apart, and how now that I'm generating money, I need to step up. As if I were some kind of prodigal child returning, expected to pay my dues. She kept insisting that I pay for my sins, and start contributing to the family? Honestly? That was ridiculous. But I didn't fall for it. Her capacity to manipulate reality and make me appear like the villain was nearly astounding. Years of dealing with her manipulative behavior had prepared me for this. I wasn't about to let her shame me into paying for something that had nothing to do with me. So I blocked her. Everything, telephone, social media, and email. She attempted to contact me in every manner possible. I just couldn't handle it anymore. I didn't want to wake up every day knowing when the next guilt trip was coming. Blocking her seemed like the only way to have some peace. It wasn't simple, however. I would like to say that blocking her felt like a clean break, as if I didn't care. But a part of me does. Part of me still wishes things had gone differently. That Mom would one day truly consider me as a child rather than a walking financial account. I doubt it. I realize that's unlikely. She made her choice. I made mine. I still can't believe how brave she is. After everything she has put me through, she expects me to pay for her stepdaughter's expensive dorm room. After practically removing me from her life to focus on her real family. I will not allow her to bring me back into the circumstance. Right now, I'm living my own life and looking forward, not backward. I'm over the drama, the guilt trips, and acting as their financial safety net when money is tight. That is their problem. It is their responsibility if they cannot afford to pay their own costs. That is where I stand. I don't know if she will try to contact me again. But if she does, she'll immediately realize that I'm no longer playing along. I have more important things to think about than paying for someone else's pampered child to live in a fancy dorm. After blocking my mother, I thought that was it. My decision made obvious, and the continual strain from her calls and texts had vanished. Naturally, nothing is ever that simple for her. A few days later, just as I was feeling ready to move on, my phone lit up with a message from my Aunt Karen. Karen is the only member of Mom's family who has consistently been rational. So, I believed she was only checking in. Nope. Her message reads, "Hey, your mother has been calling me nonstop. She says you blocked her, and she's really upset. She wants to talk to you. I think you should hear her out." I about rolled my eyeballs out of my head. Hear her out? In actuality, my mother merely wanted money. But Karen has always been the sort to preserve the peace, so I wasn't surprised when she tried to mediate. What surprised me was how my mother had dragged her into this mess. I responded, "She's not offended, Karen. She's furious because I refused to give Lily money for her dorm." Karen tried to reason with me. "Maybe you should talk to her and set some boundaries." I told her unequivocally, "The boundary is already set." I could tell she was uncomfortable being caught in the middle, so I tried not to vent my aggravation on her. "I'm not paying for anything. And I'm done with the guilt trips." She exhaled. "Just consider it, okay?" I assured her that I would think about it, but, honestly, there was nothing else to ponder. I was not about to give my mother the satisfaction of believing she could embarrass me into doing anything. I wasn't going to succumb. A few days later, I was walking home from work when I noticed her. My mother. Standing outside my apartment building, like a stalker. I had no idea how she discovered where I lived. Perhaps she hunted me down in another manner. Perhaps she received the address from Karen. Either way, she was present. She appeared irritated. As if she'd come to start a brawl. I paused in my tracks. What do you say when your mother shows up unexpectedly after you blocked her? I did not have time to sort it out. "We need to talk," she began, approaching me before I could pull out my keys. I exhaled. I was already fatigued by this confrontation before it began. I nearly laughed in her face. "Fine," I said. "But if this is about money, you're not getting a dime." She crossed her arms, obviously irritated by my tone. "I didn't raise you to be so disrespectful." Respect? From the lady who took my money, put her new family ahead of me, and only called when she needed something? Is that what she's talking about? I informed her calmly. "I owe you nothing, and I definitely don't owe Lily a private dorm room." Her expression contorted with rage, as if she couldn't believe I was standing up to her. "Lily deserves this," she snapped. That is when I lost my temper. "You think I should help? Because I'm doing well now? Are you serious?" I was snickering. "You took my college savings when I needed it. You didn't care about my future then. And now I'm supposed to care about hers?" She tried to cut me off, but I continued. "You hardly even invite me to family gatherings these days. You replaced me. And now you think I'm going to swoop in and save the day when things get tough? Absolutely not. Remember this? I am not a member of your new family." She just stood there silently. For a while, I believed I had finally reached her. That she would realize how ludicrous it all was. But no. Instead of responding, she said, "You've always been selfish. I tried to offer you a better life, and all you've done is throw it back in my face." Selfish. After everything she had done, she had the arrogance to label me selfish. I was not going to let her alter history. I was not going to let her paint herself as a victim. "You gave me nothing," I stated forcefully. "You borrowed from me. You took my time, my money, my peace. You chose them over me. And now you're living with the consequences. Deal with it." She moved closer, attempting to scare me. But I did not back down. Her voice was chilly. "You owe this family." "Lily owes you," I replied. "She is your daughter. Not mine." That was it. I owe them nothing. At that point, I realized that our relationship was beyond repair. It wasn't only about money. It was all about control. The idea that I had constructed a life apart from her, that I was no longer under her control, and that I no longer required her approval upset her. She was searching for anything to get me back in. When I turned to leave, she grabbed my arm. Before she could say anything else, I ripped my arm free, looked her in the eye and whispered, "Goodbye." Then I stepped into my building, leaving her standing out in the cold. She should not expect to be welcomed back. As soon as I went inside, a surge of emotions hit me: relief, resentment, and grief. It felt like I'd finally let go of something that had been weighing on me for years. Nonetheless, my mother remained with me. The woman who raised me, even if she didn't do it perfectly. Despite knowing I had done the right thing, I felt guilty. Not because I had walked away, but because I hadn't acted sooner. The truth was that I had not left my family. They'd left me behind. Later that evening, Karen texted me. "What happened?" I gave her the shortened version. She responded, stating she hoped we might work things out someday, even though she understood and disagreed with Mom's actions. I didn't have the heart to tell her the truth. I was done. That some huge reconciliation down the line was not going to occur. Instead, I simply said, "Thanks." And that was all. For the first time, I acknowledged that there was nothing left to fix. For the first time in my life, I had fully prioritized myself. It was not easy. But that was the correct decision. I believed it had finally ended. That my fight with my mother outside of my flat had resolved things. That I had made it obvious. I had no intention of giving in, and I would not pay for anything. At the time, I assumed we had just had our final major blowout. Wrong. Things are never easy when you have a mother like mine. Approximately a week later, I received a call from an unknown number. Normally, I ignore them. But for some reason, I chose to respond this time. When I heard the voice on the other end, I recognized it as Mark, my stepfather. I hadn't heard from him in years, so I assumed he was trying to settle things. He was equally enraged as my mother. He did not waste time greeting people or making small talk. Instead, he launched right into accusations. "So, I heard you've been disrespecting your mother." I felt my jaw tightening. My instinct was to hang up, but curiosity got the best of me. I wanted to see how far they would go with this. I kept my voice even and said, "I'm not disrespecting her, I'm simply not giving her money." He gave a sarcastic laugh. I could almost hear him roll his eyes. "You think this is about money? This is about family? Here we go again. You abandoned your family. And now you're neglecting Lily when she needs you." I could feel my patience slipping, but I kept my voice calm. "Look, I didn't abandon anyone. You pushed me out years ago, and Lily is not my responsibility." There was a pause. For a brief moment I hoped he'd finally understand. Of course, he didn't. "You're selfish," he said, his voice full of hate. "We've done everything for you, and how do you repay us? By turning your back on Lily and your mother?" I almost laughed aloud. Everything? When their lovely little family was complete, they rejected me. They stole from me, neglected me, and treated me as an afterthought. I'd had enough. "You did nothing for me," I responded, my voice crisp and firm. "You took from me. Once you had your new family, you both acted like I didn't exist. My mother stole my money, and now, suddenly, I'm the one who's supposed to make things right." Before I could finish, he cut me off. "You're not a kid anymore. It's time to stop acting like one. Family is about sacrifice. You owe this family." That word, "owe," set me off. I owe them nothing. With my patience fraying, I shot out, "No, Mark. I don't owe you a damn thing." I could hear his fury increasing, but I didn't mind. They owed something. They treated me as if I were disposable for years. I was done playing nice. I was no longer that youngster who could be walked over. I was not going to sit there and let him or my mother guilt trip me into accepting responsibility for their problems. "This isn't over," he added, his voice low and almost threatening, as if he hoped to terrify me into changing my decision. I did not even bother responding. "We're family," he added. "And we'll always be family, whether you like it or not." I hung up. And as soon as I did, I felt a sense of relief flood over me. It felt as if I'd finally closed the door on something toxic. I had drawn a line. There was no going back now. However, that was not the end of it. A few days later, I received an SMS. From Lily. She was now getting involved too. Though her message was less harsh than Mark's or my mother's, there was still a lot of guilt tripping. She wrote, "Hey, I know things have been tight, but I really need help with this dorm situation." I looked at the message and shook my head. "Not sure why you're acting so tough about it. It's just money, and it's not like you can't afford it. It's only money." The entitlement was ridiculous. She believed I owed her something, as if I were some wealthy uncle who could afford to grant her every dream. For a time, I pondered responding. But, honestly, What was the point? They had never listened before. She was not going to listen now. They were all in their own little world, and I was the villain simply because I did not satisfy their standards. So I removed the message. I also blocked her. They were never going to view things my way. No matter what I did, they saw family as a one-way street. They took. They never gave. And when I refused to give, I suddenly became the terrible person. However, they were no longer my family. Not truly. Family should be based on mutual respect, love, and support. They had none of that for me. To them, I was just a tool, someone to manipulate with guilt until I gave them what they desired. And yes, it hurt. But I was not going to let the pain control me anymore. Once I would have done anything to get their acceptance. I just wanted to feel like I belonged. But the time has passed. I was no longer a desperate child. I'd created my own life. I did not need their approval. I did not need their approval. Over the next few days, I found myself thinking about what family really meant. It's easy to get caught up in the concept that family means everything. The blood is thicker than water. However, sometimes the people who share your DNA are the ones who harm you the most. And when that happens, you have to make a decision. Do you continue to let them damage you simply because they are family, or will you walk away? Even if it means severing ties with those who should love you unconditionally. I decided to walk away. And yeah, it was difficult. But that was the correct decision. I refused to allow them to pull me down any longer. That night, as I laid in bed, I experienced something I had not felt in a long time. Peace. For once, I wasn't awaiting the next phone call. The upcoming guilt trip. The next request for money. For the first time in years, I felt liberated. And to be honest, it felt fantastic. A few weeks passed without any further problems. I was working, going out with friends, and just living my life. For the first time in a long time, everything seemed normal. Then one day, after work, I discovered a note in my mailbox. There's no return address. Just my name on the front. At first, I considered tossing it. But something about it felt odd. So I opened it. And guess who it came from? My mother. But this wasn't a card. This is not an apology. Not even an ordinary letter. This was a legal notice. She actually attempted to take me to court. Over what, you ask? Familial responsibilities. Apparently, Mom had concluded that I was financially liable for Lily's college fees. Because we are a family. And she was attempting to present it as some type of legal responsibility. As if I was obligated by law to pay for Lily's dorm. I stood there and read it. And then, I laughed out loud as I stood in my living room, holding this absurd letter. It seemed like a joke. It was so outrageous, so absurd. But this was not a joke. She had indeed consulted a lawyer. She had them prepare a full document, claiming that I owed her money. The letter was full of legal language about how family must assist family and how I was morally required to step in, given my so-called success. Success? I was 23, fresh out of college, still sorting out my life, and barely able to pay my rent. She talked about me as if I was sitting on stacks of money. As if I had limitless resources and was being terrible by refusing to share them. But even if I were wealthy, if I had all the money in the world, that doesn't mean I owed them anything. Especially not after how they treated me. I immediately phoned my grandparents. They were as startled as I was. Grandfather was upset. "Don't you worry about anything," he said. They contacted a lawyer buddy, who informed me there was no legal basis for what my mother was attempting. "We'll take care of this. Courts don't enforce family guilt trips." After a few legal processes, the issue was settled. When my mother realized she had no case, she simply dropped the whole affair. Since then, I have not heard from her. Not from Mark. Not from Lily. And honestly, it seems like a weight has been lifted from my shoulders. For years, I allowed them to control my life via guilt and manipulation. But now, for the first time, I'm completely free. Looking back, I am glad I stood my ground. Yes, it was hard. It was difficult for me to leave my own family. But that was the correct thing to do. Family is meant to be about love and support. Not about utilizing each other whenever it is convenient. I'm not sure what the future holds. But one thing is certain, I will never allow them back into my life, not after all they've done. Do I wish that things had turned out differently? Of course. But, at the end of the day, you must maintain your peace. And sometimes that entails walking away, even from those who are meant to love you most. And that's fine. On my own terms, I'm moving forward. I discovered my husband's secret family by chance. He had a double life, another child, and was stealing from us. It was a typical Saturday morning. I was in the grocery store, carrying my basket through the aisles, when I noticed him. Marcus, my husband, was standing in the produce area with a basket full of apples. But he was not alone. Next to him was a woman I'd never seen before, and between them was a young girl, no more than 5 years old, who called him Daddy. My heart has stopped. I stood there, motionless, as the scene unfolded in front of me. Marcus laughed at something the woman said, his hand resting on her lower back in a way that seemed all too familiar. The little girl tugged on his sleeve, pleading for a banana, and he beamed down at her as if she were the center of his universe. I felt as if I were witnessing a movie. This couldn't be genuine. But it was? And it crushed all I thought I understood about my marriage. I did not confront him there. I could not. Instead, I turned around and abandoned my cart in the middle of the aisle, dashing out of the store before anyone could see me cry. When I came home, my mind was racing. How long was this going on? Who was the woman? And who was the tiny girl? Marcus returned home a few hours later, acting quite normal. He kissed my cheek and asked about my day, as if nothing had happened. I wanted to yell and demand answers, but couldn't bring myself to do so. Instead, I smiled and said everything was good. But inwardly, I was collapsing. That night, while Marcus was sleeping, I checked his phone. I'd never done anything like this before, but I needed to know the truth. What I discovered was worse than I had imagined. Texts. Photos. Even a calendar with the woman from the business. Her name was Vanessa. And the little girl's name was Lily. According to the messages, she is Marcus' daughter. The next morning, I had a knot in my stomach. Marcus had already left, leaving a note on the kitchen counter indicating he had an early meeting. I knew better now. I checked his shared calendar and discovered that he was going to have breakfast with Vanessa and Lily at a diner across town. My hands shook as I dressed and walked out the door. I arrived at the diner right as they were being seated. I sat in my car, looking out the window while Marcus laughed with Vanessa and assisted Lily in cutting her pancakes. It was like watching the perfect small family. One I was not a part of. I experienced a range of feelings, including rage, betrayal, and a profound aching sadness. How could he accomplish this? To me? To us? I waited until they had left the diner before following them. Marcus dropped Vanessa and Lily off at a little house on the other side of town and drove to work as if everything was okay. I sat outside the house for hours, trying to decide what to do. Finally, I gathered the bravery to knock on the door. Vanessa responded, her look changing from astonishment to suspicion when she noticed me. "Can I help you?" she said, her voice wary. I took a deep breath. "I'm Marcus's wife," I explained, my voice quivering. Vanessa's eyes widened. For a minute, neither of us spoke. Then she stood aside, gesturing for me to enter. The house looked comfortable, with portraits of Vanessa, Lily, and, to my horror, Marcus. There were photos of them at the park, on vacation, and at what appeared to be a birthday party. It was like entering an alternate dimension in which Marcus lived a completely different life. Vanessa offered me a cup of coffee and we sat at the kitchen table. "How long have you known Marcus?" I inquired, my tone barely above a whisper. Vanessa hesitated before sighing. 5 years, she answered. We met at work. He informed me that he was divorced. I felt as if the ground had been pulled out from beneath me. 5 years. That meant Marcus had been leading a double life for nearly half of our marriage. "What about Lily?" I inquired, my voice breaking. Vanessa gazed down at her hands. "She's his daughter," she replied gently. "He's been a part of her life since the day she was born." I wasn't sure what to say. My mind was racing as I tried to absorb what I had just learnt. Marcus wasn't simply having an affair, he had an entire other family. He had been keeping his family from me for years. As I sat at Vanessa's kitchen table, my head was filled with questions. "Marcus, how had you kept this a secret for so long? How hadn't I noticed?" But before I could ask any further questions, Vanessa spoke again. "There's something else you should know," she replied, her tone cautious. She stood up and exited the room, returning moments later with a folder. Inside were legal documents such as custody agreements, child support payments, and even a will. My hands shook as I paged through them. According to the papers, Marcus had been financially supporting Vanessa and Lily for several years. He had even designated Lily as his beneficiary in the event of his death. "He told me you knew," Vanessa said, her voice filled with shame. "He said you two had an arrangement, that you were okay with it as long as he didn't bring it up around you." I felt a flash of rage. "That's a lie," I replied, my voice quivering. I had no idea any of this was happening. Vanessa appeared shocked. I'm very sorry, she said. I had no idea he was lying to both of us. We sat in silence for a long time, digesting the severity of Marcus' betrayal. Vanessa then said something that stopped me cold. There's something else, she explained. Marcus has been discussing leaving you. He stated that he wants to be with me and Lily full time. I felt like I had been hit in the stomach. Marcus wasn't only hiding a secret family. He intended to leave me for them. I wasn't sure what to do. Part of me wanted to face him, shout and cry for answers. But another part of me understood I had to be clever about this. If Marcus could lie to me for years, what else could he do? I chose to acquire proof. Over the next 3 weeks, I chronicled everything. Texts, images, and bank records. I even hired a private investigator to look further into Marcus's secret life. What I discovered was surprising. Marcus was not only helping Vanessa and Lily, but he was also transferring funds from our joint accounts into a hidden savings account in Vanessa's name. But the biggest surprise occurred when the investigator discovered something I had never imagined. Marcus has another child. A son. I live in a distant state with another woman. It turns out that Vanessa and Lily weren't his only secret family. Armed with all of the information, I decided to confront Marcus. I waited until he returned home from work one evening, his normal cheerful self, ignorant of the impending storm. I seated him down at the kitchen table with the packet of documents in front of him. What's this? He inquired, his tone light but his gaze watchful. Open it, I murmured, my voice firm despite the rage building inside me. He stopped before flipping through the papers. His face turned pale when he understood what he was staring at. Where did you get this? He questioned, his voice raised. I hired a private investigator, I said. And I spoke to Vanessa. Marcus, I know everything. About her. About Lily. Regarding your son in another state, I know you've been stealing money from us. I know everything. Marcus looked at me, his expression a mix of shock and dread. For a little while, he said nothing. Then he began to explain, or, rather, make excuses. It's not what you think, he replied. I never intended to hurt you. I got in over my head, and I had no idea how to get out. I didn't purchase it. You didn't know how to get out, I repeated, my voice quivering with rage. You have been lying to me for years, Marcus. You've been living a double, no, triple life and didn't think it would damage me? He tried to apologize and beg for forgiveness, but I wasn't having it. You don't get to apologize, I responded. You can't act like a victim here. You made your decisions, and now you have to deal with the consequences. I informed him that I filed for divorce and that I intended to take everything he had. He tried to reason and persuade me to give him another chance, but I was done. I grabbed a bag and departed that night, staying with a friend while I planned my future actions. The following few weeks were a blur of legal battles and mental misery. Marcus fought me every step of the way, but the evidence proved overwhelming. In the end, I received the property, the majority of our savings, and complete custody of our children. Marcus was ordered to pay child support and alimony, but I knew it wouldn't be enough to compensate for what he had done. The divorce was finalized 6 months later, but the emotional scars took far longer to heal. Marcus attempted to stay in touch, stating that he wanted to be a part of our children's life, but I couldn't trust him. How could I? After all he had done. I set stringent boundaries, only allowing him supervised visits. Vanessa contacted me several times, apologizing for her role in the issue. She admitted that she had no idea Marcus was married when they first met, and by the time she found out, she was already in too deep. I didn't really blame her. Marcus lied to both of us. I focused on reconstructing my life. I returned to school and earned a degree in counseling so that I might help others in similar situations. It was therapeutic in a way, transforming my misery into something positive. My children were my rock throughout it all, and their tenacity and love gave me the fortitude to keep going. It's been 5 years since that day in the grocery store, and while the anguish hasn't totally subsided, it's become more manageable. I've learned to trust again, both in myself and in others. I've even started dating, but I'm taking things slowly. Marcus, on the other hand, has not done as well. His lies caught up with him, and he not only lost me, but also Vanessa and his other family members. He's now alone. And, while I feel terrible for him, I know it's a bet he made for himself. If there's one thing I've learned from this, it's that you have no control over what other people do, but you can control how you respond. I opted to turn my anguish into strength, and by doing so, I discovered a new sense of purpose. This event taught me that life is unpredictable, and even those you trust the most can betray you in ways you never expected. But it also demonstrated how strong I am. How resilient we can all be when confronted with adversity. If you've ever been through something similar, please share your experience in the comments. How did you manage it? My stepmother had hidden my late father's will, stealing my inheritance. Now that she came begging for help, I refused. My name is Lily Andrews, and I am 28 years old. My stepmother and younger sister Rachel and I live in the house that my late father bequeathed to us. My life has never been easy in our family, but I've always tried to sort things out for the sake of peace. That night, everything changed. It was a large party. My stepmother, Gloria, enjoys arranging these costly occasions, despite her constant complaints about money. Guests packed the home, laughing, drinking, and flaunting their pricey outfits. I remained to myself, standing near the kitchen and avoiding the spotlight, like I normally do. Then something happened. Rachel, my 24-year-old sister, stood in the center of the living room, her voice loud enough to pique everyone's interest. "Oh, Lily is here? Look at her, always hiding in the shadows, as if she doesn't belong." Her words sliced into me like a knife. Some attendees laughed uneasily, unsure how to respond. My face flushed with shame, but I did not answer. Rachel understood how much I disliked confrontations. Gloria joined in before I could slip away. "Well, maybe Lily doesn't belong here after all," she joked. "She doesn't contribute to anything important around here, unlike Rachel." Gloria smiled at the audience, as if her comments were a joke. However, they weren't. I wanted to yell and protect myself, but I remained silent. No one knew I'd been surreptitiously paying Rachel's college tuition for the past 2 years. She wouldn't have had her expensive degree without me, and now she's disrespecting me in front of everyone. After the party, I returned to my room, hoping for some peace and quiet. But Gloria wasn't finished with me yet. She stormed in, her tone rough and cold. "You should pack your belongings and leave, Lily. This isn't your house anymore. You're just taking up space." I stood there, frozen. How could she say that? My father left the house to me. But Gloria had always acted as if she owned everything, and Rachel took her lead. For the first time in years, I did not fight or cry. I just looked at her and replied, "Fine, I'll leave." But in my heart, I knew it wasn't over. They were unaware of the sacrifices I had made for them. They had no idea that their remarks were pushing me to the point of no return, and they had no idea what I was going to do next. My mind raced as I packed my things. Every memory of Gloria and Rachel's mistreatment played back in my mind, the sarcastic remarks, the frequent comparisons, and the way they always took me for granted. As I closed up my luggage, I felt the weight of years of quiet sorrow lifted from my shoulders. This house might have been my father's gift to me, but it had become a prison. It was no longer a home. Before leaving, I went into my room and got the folder I'd concealed in the back of my closet. Inside were all of Rachel's college tuition receipts, proving all I had done for her. I was not going to let her forget it. As I approached the front door with my bag, Gloria and Rachel were seated in the living room, sipping wine and joking as if nothing had occurred. Rachel smirked when they spotted me. "Are you finally leaving?" "It took you too long," she replied, rolling her eyes. I paused in my tracks to look at her. My voice was calm but forceful. "You know, Rachel, I've always backed you. I funded your tuition when you couldn't afford it. So this is how you repay me? Mocking me in front of everyone?" Her face became pallid. "What are you talking about?" Rachel asked. I held up the folder and dropped it on the coffee table. "Here is the proof, every money I made to keep you in school. You didn't know, did you? Gloria told you that was her, right?" Rachel looked at Gloria, her uncertainty rising to rage. "You told me you were paying for it?" she shouted. Gloria stood up and tried to maintain her composure. "That is enough, Lily. Stop trying to create drama and simply leave." I shake my head. "Oh, I am leaving. But from now on, you are on your own. I will not pay another dime for either of you." With that, I walked out the door, leaving them to face the truth. For the first time in years, I felt liberated. The next morning, I moved into a small but comfortable apartment on the opposite side of town. It wasn't a lot, but it was mine. I began focusing on myself for a change, working harder at my career, meeting new people, and caring for my mental health. Meanwhile, things in the old house began to fall apart. Rachel was unable to keep up with her college expenses and had to quit. Gloria attempted to guilt me into assisting them, but I ignored her calls. One day, Rachel texted me. "Lily, I apologize for everything. Could we talk?" I looked at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to forgive her, but another part of me understood that forgiveness did not imply returning to the way things were. I responded, "We can talk, but I won't let you take advantage of me again. When we eventually met, Rachel burst into tears. She stated that she had been jealous of me for many years. She thought Gloria's approval was all that counted, but she now realizes how toxic Gloria's influence was. I know I've hurt you, Lily, she admitted, her voice shaking. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want to make things right. Rachel began working to repair our friendship. She really apologized and began working to pay her own way through school. For the first time in years, I recognized her as the sister I once cared about. Gloria attempted to persuade Rachel into turning against me again, but Rachel had finally seen her true colors. When Gloria realized she couldn't control us anymore, she fled town, leaving behind the toxic environment she had created. Rachel and I gradually rebuilt our relationship, this time based on respect and honesty. I maintained my distance, focusing on my own ambitions and pleasure, but I knew one thing for certain. I would never allow someone to take advantage of me again. Months passed before things felt normal again. I had settled into my new apartment, concentrating on my profession and creating a life that was not centered on my family's instability. Rachel and I were gradually restoring trust, and I admired her efforts, even if I wasn't ready to fully reintegrate her into my life. Then one evening, when I was preparing dinner, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Hello? I responded hesitantly. Is this Lily Andrews? A forceful voice said. Yes. Who is this? This is Margaret Gray with Greenfield Law Offices. I'm calling about your late father's estate. My heart skips a beat. Estate? I thought everything was settled years ago. Margaret hesitated. Not everything. A situation involving your father's will has lately come to light. Would you be available to meet tomorrow? I agreed, but I couldn't shake the impression that this call was about more than paperwork. The next day, I sat in Margaret's office, nervous. She handed me a bundle of documents, her face stern. Lily, your father left a second will, which was only recently discovered. Margaret's comments caused my heart to pound. This will override the previous one and includes a significant inheritance, a trust fund intended for you. My thoughts raced. A trust fund? Why didn't this come up before? It was deliberately hidden, Margaret explained. We suspect Gloria hid it by claiming ignorance when the estate was first split. She probably didn't want you to use the money. I felt both angry and relieved. My stepmother had stolen from me, but now I had the opportunity to reclaim what was rightfully mine. Can I access it now? I asked. Yes, Margaret replied with a smile. And I believe you'll find the sum substantial. Your father wanted you to be financially secure. When I saw the numbers, my jaw sank. The trust fund had more than $500,000. The trust fund became widely known, and Gloria soon returned. She arrived unannounced at my apartment, looking untidy and desperate. Lily, we need to talk, she continued, her voice quivering. There's nothing to talk about, Gloria, I said, maintaining a chilly tone. I know about the trust fund, she blurted out. You don't understand how hard things have been for Rachel and me. We need help. I looked at her incredulously. You mean the same Rachel you duped into turning against me? The same Rachel who is finally learning to stand on her own without your toxic influence. Gloria's face flushed hot. I tried to safeguard this family. Everything I did was for Rachel's future. No, I replied firmly. You did everything for yourself. And you know what? I'm finished cleaning up your mess. Later that week, Rachel called me in tears. Gloria is furious with me, she continued. She thinks I betrayed her because I won't ask you for money. What do you want me to do, Rachel? I asked. Nothing, she said, her voice steady. I simply wanted to let you know that I am done with her. I'm moving out and starting a job. I do not want to be like her anymore. Her words astonished me. Rachel had finally accepted responsibility for her life. For the first time, I had a glimmer of optimism for our relationship. With Gloria out of my life, I focused on building a future I could be proud of. I used a portion of the trust fund to start my own business, which I had been dreaming about for years. It wasn't easy, but it was mine, and it gave me a sense of purpose that I hadn't experienced before. Rachel and I stayed in touch and met for coffee or supper on occasion. She was becoming a better version of herself, and I was proud of her. Gloria, I heard, left to another city, leaving behind the damage she caused. I did not feel sorry for her. She had reaped what she sowed. Looking back, I understand that being kicked out of my own home was the finest thing that could have happened to me. It encouraged me to stand up for myself and stop allowing others to take advantage of my goodwill. Now, I live a life full of peace, purpose, and the assurance that I am finally free of my stepmother's toxic control. Rachel is finally learning how to stand on her own 2 feet. And perhaps, just maybe, we'll be able to reconnect as sisters again.